What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 2 Pi Chapter 26 Want to be Wanted? Looking at the fellow Murlocs who backed away in horror. Arlong stood up suddenly, his eyes were blood red, his mouth opened wide, and he shouted angrily at the front, "Get out of the way." When the Murlocs heard the boss's voice, they all heaved a sigh of relief, and ran back quickly. That embarrassed look no longer had the arrogance of the past. Kuina ignored the fleeing Murlocs, and also Arlong. She turned her eyes and stared at the mouse again. The mouse trembled in fright at this glance. Looking at Kuina walking towards him, his legs gave way and he fell back to the ground. Then he cried out in horror. "What the hell is going on with you, woman? We have no grievances and no enmity. Why do you insist on finding me?" He is very scared and wrong now. "Why, I am human too. What do you mean by staring at me instead of staring at the Murloc?" Arlong was even angrier to see Kuina completely ignoring him. "You human woman, since you are so eager to seek death, then I will fulfill you." As he spoke, he turned around and pulled out a large saw blade with sharp serrations from behind the pillar behind him. Then he turned his head, stared fiercely at Kuina, kicked the table in front of him away, and rushed towards Kuina quickly. Although this human woman's sword skills are very powerful, he believes that no matter how powerful this woman is, it is impossible to beat him. Because he is the highest reward in East Blue, the captain of the dragon pirates, Murloc Arlong. Arlong rushed up to Kuina, raised the big saw blade with both hands, and slashed at Kuina fiercely. "Go to hell." Arlong was confident that no one in the entire East Blue could take his slash. At this moment, Kuina looked at Arlong for the first time, a cold light flashed in her eyes, the knife in her hand came behind and blocked under the big saw blade. Clang, a gust of wind pressure blows towards the surroundings from the position where the two knives collided. "Okay," Arlong froze for a moment, staring at the knife in his hand, feeling the strength below him that was comparable to his. Impossible. How could there be a human being in East Blue who can take his slash? His gaze met Kuina's indifferent gaze upwards, and for the first time there was a serious element in his voice. "You're not from the East Blue, you're from the Grand Line." Advertisement. Only this explanation can convince him that the power of this human woman can compete with him. Kuina looked up at Arlong, there was no change in her eyes, still indifferent. "You talk too much nonsense." Then she put her left hand on the hilt as well, holding the hilt with both hands and pushing Arlong's knife hard. The blood vessels on Arlong's forehead and arms burst out, and his whole body was red. He gritted his teeth, pressed the soles of his feet to the ground, and shouted loudly at Kuina. How can a mere lowly human be stronger than the great Murlocs in terms of strength? Kuina didn't pay much attention to Arlong's roar. She took a deep breath, retracted the knife slightly, and then used more force to push Arlong with the big saw off the ground in one fell swoop. Clang, there was a louder sound and air pressure from where the two knives met. The mouse sat on the ground, unable to open his eyes due to the wind pressure. He wanted to escape, but his body seemed to be drained of strength, and he couldn't control it at all. Arlong tried hard to grab the ground with both feet, but it was useless. The force pushed him up in one go. As soon as his feet were off the ground, there was nothing left to fight Kuina. Then his entire huge body was rushed towards the rear by a force he couldn't resist. Boom, his back arched, and he slammed into the wall behind him hard, creating a deep pothole. Then with a bang, the wall behind him suddenly collapsed, burying his whole body inside. The Murlocs around looked at the little dirtbag behind them, their eyes were confused. How could this human being's strength be even inferior to Arlong's? They shook their heads in disbelief. This guy must not be human. At this moment, Sorata suddenly turned his head and glanced at the pool behind Kuina. "This thing is Zalba." He was still wondering if something was missing, but it turned out that the six-clawed octopus brother was missing. If Xiao Ba has been hiding in the deep sea, it will be difficult for Sorata to find him. After all, he can pretend to be a real fish. Judging by the way this guy looks, he probably wants to sneak attack Kuina while Kuina's old power is gone and his new power is not yet born. Too bad Sorata won't give him the chance. He didn't care if Zalba was Rayleigh's savior or something, so he let him go. Although this guy seems to be a good guy in the anime, in fact he has the same virtues as the other Murlocs in the Dragon Pirates, but he just acts a little silly. If at that time, Rayleigh really came to him for revenge, then he would kill Rayleigh as well. Advertisement. Seeing that this guy was about to emerge from the water, Sorata quickly pulled out Zonkong and slashed at the water area where Xiao Ba was hiding. A silver-gray slash quickly flew towards the pool behind Kuina. Just happened to bump into Xiao Ba, who had just emerged from the water. Clang, the silver-gray slash did not stay for a moment, and quickly slashed across the twin knives held in front of Xiao Ba's body, across Xiao Ba's body, and then quickly flew along the waterway to the distant sea surface, disappearing. Xiao Ba froze in place holding his two knives. When a wave hit, the knives in his hands suddenly snapped in two with a ding. Then in the middle of his body, a line of blood emerged from the center of his eyebrows, and the bloodline grew rapidly. With a poof, his body suddenly split in two, and the blood stained the sea around him red. Of course, it wasn't just his body that split apart, even a crack appeared silently in the waterway behind him. The cracks extend all the way to the sea outside. Looking from a distance, it looks like someone has scratched a large jelly. The seawater on both sides of the crack has been pouring into the crack, and it will not heal for a long time. Little 8. At this time, seeing the murlocs in Arlong's soil, they realized that they yelled at Xiao Ba in the waterway. Then Chi-Chi turned their heads and looked at Sorata, trembling all over, eyes protruding, terrified to ultimate. Great swordsman? It's a great swordsman. Although they haven't seen the great swordsman, they have heard of it. It is a monster that can open mountains, split seas, and cut ships at sea. Especially in the terrifying new world, there are all existences who can become big shots. They froze in place, their bodies were cold, and they knew that they were doomed this time. Kuina ignored what was going on behind her. As long as Sorata was around, she just had to move forward. She stared down at Colonel Mouse, who was lying on the ground, and Ultimate's disgust flashed in her indifferent eyes. Looking at Kuina standing in front of him, Colonel Mouse was already frightened silly at this moment. His body was trembling, his hands were propped behind his back, his feet were on the ground, and he couldn't help moving back. He yelled in his mouth, I'm Marine, you will be wanted if you kill me. Want to be wanted? Kuina tilted her head and shrugged nonchalantly. Then go to arrest. Chapter 27. Are you ready to fall into the boundless hell? Kuina took a step forward and slowly raised the knife towards the mouse. Her movements were a little slow this time, as slow as that of an elderly person. She wanted the mouse to have a good taste of the imminence of death. As Kuina raised the knife, the rat's body shook even more. His eyes fixed on Kuina's blade, the cold light shining on the blade, reflecting his embarrassed and terrified appearance at this moment. Kuina's rising right hand, like a black hole, firmly grasped his mind and made his abdomen squirm. At this moment, he suddenly felt an unbearable urge to urinate. Then, between the mouse's legs, a piece of water gradually appeared. As time went by, the water gradually grew larger, and finally burst out like a flood, converging under his buttocks, like a stream usually flow out. Apparently the mouse was scared to pee by Kuina. Kuina looked at the bear-like appearance of the mouse, with disgust in his eyes. With a flash of the knife, she raised her right hand and pointed the mouse's neck with a sharp knife. The trembling body of the mouse stopped immediately. He squinted, staring ahead in horror, his eyes full of longing for life. He tried hard to move his body, but it didn't help, because his nerve center had been disconnected from his body. He could already feel that the boundless darkness had come, pulling his soul into the abyss of hell bit by bit. He has never felt that time is so long, and the thing that has lasted to this moment seems to him to be as long as a century. His eyelids became heavier and heavier, until his soul was swallowed up by the boundless darkness, and the last gleam of light in his eyes dissipated. This guy didn't know who he was facing until he died, so why did he have to kill him, even if he was wanted? Standing where he was, Kuina backhanded the knife, throwing the bloodline on the knife at the mouse. It was this bloodline that broke the stillness of the mouse's body. I saw the mouse's head suddenly scratch to the back, and fell to the ground with a boom. And his headless body, like a domino card, lost its support and collapsed to the ground in an instant. The blood mixed with his urine, like a stream, flowed into the nearby pool. Kuina quietly looked at the bloodstream flowing by her feet, the disgust in her eyes dissipated a little. This is the true portrayal of the filthy life of the mouse. There are dirty stains in this guy's blood. Kuina glanced at the mouse's corpse indifferently, and then looked at the two Marines behind him who had fainted from fright. How do these two people deal with it? Advertisement. Killed? She thought about it and shook her head. Forget it, let Sorata handle it. Then she looked at the remaining murlocs. The murlocs felt the familiar, Shinigami-like indifferent eyes, and stared at them again. They knew that the female devil was coming to deal with them. At this time, the instinct to survive temporarily broke the fear in their hearts, allowing them to generate strength out of thin air. What? They roared, dragged their heavy bodies with tired spirits, and rushed towards the swimming pool with difficulty. There is their only way of life. Ever since they saw Sorata's slash, they no longer believed that their boss, Arlong, was alive to save them. Looking at the swimming pool, they felt blue veins all over their bodies, and they used strength that they had never used in their entire lives. As long as they rush to the pool and jump into the sea, they can use their identity as murlocs to escape. Seeing that the murloc on the opposite side wanted to run, Kuina quickly kicked her feet on the ground, and rushed over quickly with a whoosh. They were about to rush to the pool, but to the desperation of the murlocs, Kuina was already standing at the end of their only life path. In the end, all they could see was a flash of a knife, and all their murlocs fell down on the way to the pool. Obviously this is not their way of life, but the way to hell. In the stone pile of the collapsed wall on the right, Arlong was lying there, motionless. Because his head was hit by a huge boulder, he couldn't stand up immediately. That is to say, during the tens of seconds he was in a daze, the entire Arlong domain had been bloodied, and his compatriots had all fallen to the ground and died. He shook his head, and drilled out of the pile of rubble in bursts of boom. He raised his head, opened his misty eyes, looked at the scene outside, his dilated pupils contracted rapidly, and his brain instantly woke up. Seeing the murloc corpses all over the floor, especially Xiao Ba who was divided into two in the pool, he was furious to the extreme. He just regards human beings as a lowly race, and he is relatively friendly to the same kind. Especially these murlocs, all followed him from the Fishman Island. Originally, they came together to enjoy the blessings and dominate the world. Advertisement. I don't know, they're all dead now. Even Xiao Hachi, who was a member of the original Sun Pirates, died, and it was such a miserable way of death. Arlong's eyeballs were bloodshot, all dyed red, emitting an extremely bloodthirsty light. The pupils in his eyes had shrunk to the point that they were no longer visible, which showed his anger at this moment. He looked at Xiao Ba, suddenly thought of something, turned his head to look at Kuina, suppressed the anger in his heart, and asked loudly. Kruby and Chu, were you killed too? According to the time, Kruby and the others should have returned by now, but they are nowhere to be seen. According to the trajectory of their actions, their last stop was Kokoja village, and the direction these two humans came from was from Kokoja village. Although it was basically certain that Kruby and the others were dead, he still couldn't help asking. You're talking about those stinky murlocs who go to collect head fees. Kuina stared at Arlong indifferently, and a cold voice came out of her mouth. They are now. They should have been dried like fish. She didn't put away the knife, and rushed towards Arlong with the knife in hand. Think so much, you should think about yourself. Seeing Kuina rushing towards him, the blood on Arlong's body accelerated, and his whole body turned red. The pulsating blood vessels were like pythons wrapping around his body. Let his already tall body swell again, looking from a distance like a walking blood-red monster. He pulled out the big saw knife from the pile of rocks, held the handle of the knife with both hands, quickly raised it above his head, and slashed fiercely at Kuina who had come close. Go to hell. You human being of a lowly race. He believed that Kuina would never be able to catch his knife. The power of his knife was nearly double that of the previous one, and this was his life-burning knife. Rage Shark Saw Blade. Looking at the big saw blade cutting through the air rapidly above his head, Kuina didn't try to harden it. She's not stupid, she really can handle the power of this knife, but it's very easy to dodge. There was a flash of red light in her eyes, and her sense of knowledge was activated quietly. She leaned to the left and turned her body lightly, letting the blade of the big saw knife stick to the tip of her nose, slashed in front of her, and slashed to the ground. Boom! The hard stone slab on the ground suddenly shattered into several pieces and shot around. The big saw blade continued unabated, and ruthlessly blasted a big hole in the ground under the stone slab. Chapter 28. Isn't the evil dragon also a dead fish? Kuina was unaffected by the huge roar behind him. She stepped forward, walked under Arlong's arm, and the knife in her hand went up, slashing at Arlong's open chest. Arlong knew he was going to suffer after the knife fell through. But he was in the Grand Line before, and he had a lot of combat experience. Knowing that Kuina's knife, he couldn't dodge it no matter what, so he simply didn't dodge it. With hostility in his eyes, he lowered his head and slammed his head at Kuina fiercely. He wanted to pierce Kuina with his long zigzag nose. Go to hell. If it can be stabbed, it doesn't matter if it is hit by the knife. Too bad Kuina won't give him the chance. A red light flashed in Kuina's eyes. She stopped her forward momentum ahead of time, turned to the right, took a small step back, and stood on the left side of Arlong. And the knife she swung out turned around and inserted into the scabbard. Arlong didn't expect that Kuina could stop his forward body like this, and dodged ahead of his nose like a prophet. He didn't have time to think about it, and he couldn't stop his momentum, so he could only slam his head into the ground fiercely. However, Kuina raised his right foot at this time, and when Arlong's head was lowered, he kicked Arlong's chin hard with an upward kick. Boom! A wave of air pressure slammed from Arlong's chin to the surroundings. This kick directly shocked his completely blood-red eyes, and the whites of his eyes rolled up for a while, and at the same time, his whole body was lifted off the ground. Just as Arlong's body flew upwards, Kuina quickly retracted her right foot, stood still, then twisted her waist, raised her left foot backwards, and slapped Arlong's waist fiercely. Boom! There was another louder dull sound, rushing around with a bigger airwave. Puff! This kick made Arlong spit out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. His huge rising body was immediately changed direction by the force of this kick, and rushed towards the tower-like building behind him. With a boom, it crashed through the house and hit the wall behind. Puff! The impact of his back against the wall made Arlong spit out another mouthful of blood. He bent over, leaned against the fence, shook his head, covered his waist with his left hand, and coughed. Cough, cough, cough. This kick not only caused him internal injuries, but also reminded him of the ability of the opponent to evade his attack in advance every time. He raised his head, and the blood red in his eyes faded instantly, turning into horror. He looked at Kuina outside through the big hole in the house, and asked loudly. It's observation hockey. Kuina looked at Arlong suspiciously. This guy must have been beaten stupid. The sound is so small. What did you say? Arlong's body has slowly recovered. He stood up straight, and kept putting his hands into his mouth, pulling out his teeth. Advertisement every time his teeth grow back, they're sharper than the last time. In the end, only a pair of huge teeth full of steel knives remained in his mouth. He stared at Kuina and shouted loudly. Don't think that there is observation hockey. I can't do anything about you. As long as you are bitten by my teeth, I can crush you in an instant. Then he bent his legs, kicked hard on the ground, and ejected quickly. Heads forward, he charged towards Kuina like a torpedo. Kuina looked at the rushing Arlong. A trace of disdain flashed in her indifferent eyes. In the eyes of outsiders, Arlong's current speed is very fast, but in Kuina's eyes, it is still too slow. She turned slightly and easily dodged the blow. What Kuina doesn't know, however, is that this guy Arlong isn't out to fight Kuina to the death. When the guy found out that Kuina could hockey, he already knew that even if he risked his life, he couldn't win. After all, he has been in the Grand Line for so long, how could he not know the existence of hockey? This thing has absolute restraint for people like them who don't have hockey. You can't hit the opponent, but the opponent can hit you. Under such circumstances, no matter how powerful you are, it cannot change the outcome of the battle. And the opposite is a swordsman, the swordsman with the strongest attack power. Seeing that the waterway was near, Arlong couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. As long as he is in the sea, he doesn't have to be afraid of this guy anymore. After all, the sea is the home of their murlocs. In the sea they will not only double their strength, but also be faster. At that time, just hide in the deep sea, and when these two scary guys leave, he will still be the evil dragon who ruled the entire island. Okay, at this moment, he suddenly showed a puzzled expression. Why is the waterway that should have been there in front of him still far away? It was as if he had stopped in midair, but he could feel that he was flying all the time. At this moment, he suddenly realized that the silver-haired human on the fence had stood beside him at some point. Well, I almost let you run away, it's so scary. Sorata feigned surprise, staring at Arlong who was still flying in his space domain. You guy, what kind of ability is this? Arlong had already discovered the problem at this time. He was indeed flying, but it was as if he was flying in place. This does not fix him, but elongates the space. He stopped his body, stood on the edge of the pool, and one step forward was the sea he dreamed of, but this step, for the current him, was an impossible distance to cross. He looked at Sorata, his face was full of horror, and he no longer had the arrogance of the past. At this moment, a large sea king with the body of a cow and the tail of a fish suddenly appeared on the distant sea. It let out a roar, and quickly ran towards Arlong Paradise. Advertisement apparently its target is Sorata by the side of the pool. Seeing this sea kings, Arlong's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help feeling a glimmer of hope in his heart, but what happened in the next moment made him completely desperate. I saw that Sorata didn't even look at the sea kings, but simply drew his sword, swung it, and retracted it. With a silver-gray slash, it easily cut the sea kings in half. Arlong's pupils shrank ultimate, and he couldn't speak fluently. Obviously, he knew what a sword hero who could make such a huge slash portends. Big, great swordsman. Sorata stared at Arlong and said frivolously, guess what kind of ability I'm trapping you in, you'll get a prize if you guess right. Space. Like devil fruit. Arlong shuddered and replied tremblingly. Okay. He looked down at his chin and thought, looked up at Arlong and smiled. It's a pity that you guessed wrong and you will be punished. Well, what are you punished for? Or I'll punish you to death, how about it? Sorata stared at Arlong and said the cruelest thing ever. Seeing that Arlong didn't speak, he nodded and continued. Seeing that you don't answer, so you agree. I agree with the egg, I agree. Arlong stared at Sorata with horror and anger in his eyes. The pressure around him made him unable to open his mouth at all. He was struggling like a drowning person, but it didn't help. Kuina, do it. Sorata turned to look at Kuina and smiled. Kuina pursed her lips and looked at Arlong indifferently. Damn guy, she almost made a fool of herself in front of Sorata, and if Arlong escapes, she won't be laughed at for a long time. She walked up to Arlong, drew the knife, and cut the blade at Arlong's neck obliquely. It seemed that she was going to behead him. Arlong felt the blade approaching swiftly, and struggled more violently. His originally fierce eyes were now full of grievance and humiliation. With such an aggrieved way of dying, he might as well fight Kuina to the death. The blade cut across Arlong's neck in an instant, and his struggling body stopped immediately. His eyes were full of nostalgia for life, but it was useless. Sorata stared at Arlong, who had no vital signs, and took back the space domain. Arlong's huge body immediately fell into the pool. Puff, there was a not-so-big splash, and it seemed that Arlong would definitely get a high score if he went diving. Then his head was quickly separated. He never imagined that he could be decapitated to death in East Blue by humans like a real fish pressed on a chopping board. It can only be said that this is his fate as a fish. Chapter 29 The banner noon on the village road of Kokoja village. There were crowds of people, and it was extremely lively. The villagers who were ruled by the dragon pirates in the dragon domain quickly gathered towards Kokoja village after receiving the news of the dragon pirates' destruction. The dragon that had been oppressing them for 6 years finally fell. They took out their only food, fruit and meat, and wanted to entertain their heroes with the grandest banquet. At the same time, it was announced that they would bid farewell to the past and welcome new life. After Sorata and Kuina wiped out Arlong, they returned to the ship to find the three of Ahua, searched the Arlong paradise, and found hundreds of millions of berry. As for the two marines who came to Arlong's paradise with the mice, Sorata didn't give them a chance and let them go to hell without any pain. He couldn't believe that the mouse would bring two irrelevant marines to trade with Arlong. Even if the two marines are not the main characters, they are the rat's cronies and accomplices. And he didn't care about the warships parked in the open sea. After all, most of the lower-level people didn't know what the higher-ups were doing at all. Even if they knew their boss was doing something criminal, there was nothing they could do. They have no way and dare not to expose this matter. Because many examples tell them that if they are found out, not only will they be miserable, but even their family members will be affected. So Sorata will not go to the bottom of the marine trouble. Who doesn't want to support their families, and Arlong Paradise has already been burned down by him. When he saw the pile of maps in the room on the 5th floor and Bloodline's pen left on the desk, he could imagine a thin figure, in this cage-like room, doing what she liked very much at first, but now she was very disgusted with her work. People's dreams should not be trapped in this small room, but should be in the boundless sea. All he can do is add a fire to burn down the cage in the girl's heart. Let her really do what she likes, and pursue her dreams since she was a child. On the village road, in the small police booth, the three of Ahua were distributing money to the villagers. Surprisingly, they all let go of their usual funny nature and became serious. Judging from the smiles in their eyes and faces that were about to overflow, they should be enjoying it immensely at this time. Enjoying it, the villagers looked like heroes and looked at them. Although they all knew that they didn't help anything this time, it didn't prevent them from enjoying the fruits of victory. Who told them to be a gang? One by one, the villagers lined up in an orderly manner and excitedly walked into the police booth to distribute the money. Although the money is not too much, but it is better than nothing, isn't it? Of course, the dragon pirates have collected more money than this over the years, but they can't stand the extravagance of these guys. These guys have nothing to do every day, all they know is to have a banquet, eat, drink and have fun. It's pretty good to have hundreds of millions of berry left. Under the eaves of a house behind the police box, Sorata was lying on a chair, lost in thought. Advertisement. He was considering whether to hang the flag. After all, they killed a Marine non-commissioned officer this time. Even if they don't hang up, Marine will treat them as pirates and issue a reward order. As for the collusion between the mouse and Arlong, he didn't have to think about it. The world government and Marine will definitely not make it public for the sake of face, and will try their best to cover it up. Maybe it will be publicized that the mouse died in the line of duty. So it doesn't matter whether they hang up or not, they're already going to be classified as a group of pirates by Marine. And it will be spread all over the world. He shook his head, pulled off the wine gourd on his waist, raised his head and took a sip, and didn't think about these things again. Turning his head to look at Kuina, who was busy with New Okagao in the crowd, a smile appeared on his face. Kuina hasn't been this happy for a long time. Seeing her reddish face covered with a smile that couldn't be concealed, Sorata's eyes flashed tenderness. It seems that Kuina really enjoys the treatment of a hero. Then be a hero. Anyway, he has no goals in this world. He will not join any revolution. Because the world is like this, it goes round and round, and you can't expect a feudal world to make socialism. Even if the world government and the celestial dragons are overthrown, won't the current revolutionary army change? He can answer with certainty, will change, it will definitely change. When the victors enjoy the supremacy, as if they are the rulers of the world, they will become the evil they once overthrew. Unless the people at the bottom are completely liberated, this will be a process of continuous reincarnation. No one can break it. He can be a hero, but he cannot be a great man. A great man is too tired, he can't bear it. And this hero is not the hero of the world, nor the hero of the people, but his own hero in his heart. In fact, he is a lazy person in his bones, and he doesn't want to do great things. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become an otaku in his previous life. Now that he has come to this world, what he wants to do most is to do whatever he wants and be free. Let him and the people around him be carefree, and enjoy the beauty of this world to the fullest. Certainly, his freewheeling is not the pirate's lawlessness. After all, they are partners of justice. What are you thinking, Sorata? At this moment, Ajien walked over with a windmill on his head and a smile on his face. The excitement in his eyes still hasn't dissipated. Advertisement. He looked at Sorata and said with a smile. Everyone is busy with the banquet, but our hero is here in a daze. This is not our way of hospitality. He was helping to decompose the meat, but was suddenly dismissed by the villagers as clumsy and asked him to talk to Sorata. Glancing at Sorata, he couldn't understand what the villagers were planning. They are too grateful to Sorata's gang to neglect any heroes. Hearing this, Sorata raised her head and stared at the windmill spinning above his head in a daze. This guy's windmill seemed to be worn to amuse Nami. He has been wearing it for more than 10 years, but he is really a gentle guy. He raised the wine gourd, took a sip of the wine, frowned slightly, and said, Nothing, just thinking about how to draw the flag on our ship. Are you planning to fly the pirate flag? Ajien first asked in surprise, then he seemed to have thought of something, nodded and said with a clear face. That's right, that Colonel Mouse died in Arlong Paradise, and Marine always has to find a reason. He paused, then said seriously to Sorata, and you are the best reason. Even if you don't become pirates, they will define you as pirates and offer rewards. He had known about Ajien's analysis for a long time. He shrugged indifferently, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and smiled at Ajien. Okay, Uncle Jien, don't analyze it anymore. I don't think the purpose of flying the flag is to become a pirate. We are an adventure group. Adventure group? Okay. Adventure group is a team that travels around the world on adventures. Is there still such a saying? Isn't this the pirates? In Ajien's cognition, as long as he goes to sea and hangs the flag, he is either a pirate or a marine. He had never heard of any adventure group talk. Sorata stared at Jien and was speechless. Then he leaned back on the chair and said helplessly, if you say that the pirates are the pirates, right? The concept of an adventure group simply does not exist in this world. Nor can he change people's ingrained beliefs. I knew it, isn't this the pirates? Ajien felt that Sorata was a little depressed, and patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Don't worry, Sorata, we just hate pirates like dragons. Even if you hang the pirate flag, you are still our heroes. Sorata looked up at Ajien, who had a face that I understood everything, and silently raised the wine gourd and took a big gulp. Ajien didn't understand, so the three guys in Ahua couldn't understand what an adventure group was. Forget it, the pirate group is the pirate group. Now that they have all come to the world of One Piece and have gone to sea, how can there be no flags? Chapter 30 The Windmill of Freedom. Sorata put away the depression in her heart. Turning to Ajien, he said, "By the way, Uncle Ajien, why do you keep wearing a windmill on your head? Can you give me the windmill?" Windmill. Ajien paused, then touched the windmill on his head and fell into deep thought. Aware of Ajien's state, Sorata asked aloud, "Uncle Jien, what's the matter? Are you reluctant?" "It's not that I'm reluctant, it's just that this windmill has a special meaning to someone." Ajien came back to his senses and explained, "Someone?" "Well, a strong, brave man." At this time Sorata already knew who he was talking about, but he still asked knowingly, "Who the hell is that?" Jien looked in the direction of the orange grove behind the village, and slowly told the story of Nami. He has a gentle smile when he tells the story of Nami and the windmill. When it comes to Nami joining the dragon pirates, he shows hatred. When it comes to Nami, every time he returns to the village with injuries all over his body, he will show his heartache. Under the oppression of the dragon pirates, Nami became the only ray of light in the hearts of him and all the villagers. In fact, they have always known why Nami joined the dragon pirates, and they also knew why Nami came back with injuries every time he went out. But they can't do anything, they can't help Nami a bit. All they can do is keep Nami from messing around a bit and let her do what she thinks she can really buy back the village from Arlong. Even if they all know, this is actually a luxury. But this is the only hope in Nami's heart. This glimmer of hope cannot be broken by them. If you really want to break, you have to go slower. Because if Nami is desperate, the only light in their hearts will be gone. Thinking of this, Ajien shook his head, putting away the hatred for the dragon pirates on his face. Looking at the village road, the faces of the villagers were filled with smiles again, and a smile appeared on his face. It feels like it's back to when the dragon didn't come. Yes, it's all over. The dragon is gone. I think Nami will be very happy. She no longer has to go to sea for money. No more drawing the damn map for Arlong. She will be able to do it again in the future, the little princess of their Kokocha village. Be happy when you should be happy, be sad when you should be sad, no need to pretend to be strong anymore. Thinking of this, Ajien glanced at Kuina more gratefully. I really don't know how to thank them. Jien shook his head, lost his thoughts, and turned to look at Sorata. Advertisement. Oh, by the way, I haven't asked you what you want this windmill for. Sorata stared at the windmill above his head and smiled. I just saw that you have a windmill on your head. I'm very curious. Besides, isn't this thinking about the pirate flag? Thinking about it, just forget about the windmill pattern as the pirate flag. He did see the windmill, and thought of the protagonist in this world. The windmill village where Wong Luffy is located is also a windmill, so he simply used the windmill. Otherwise, you would never use a hammer and a sickle or 5 stars. For these two, he is familiar with them, and they are easy to be harmonious. And the windmill also represents bravery, diligence, progress, loyalty, happiness, agility and love. It also symbolizes people's love for the sky and fairy tale happiness. For him, this is his pursuit. He also hopes that he and the people he cherishes can always be like windmills. There can be no troubles, pains, and disasters forever. You can live a happy and healthy life all the time. So this is all. Jien hesitated for a moment, but took off the windmill and handed it to Sorata. No, take it. However, Sorata didn't pick it up, but looked at Jien with a smile and said, Forget it, Uncle Jien, I just took it as a reference to draw a flag. And for you, this is a good memory with Nami. He paused for a moment and continued, It's impossible for me to snatch a little girl's childhood toy. Staring at Sorata's expression that didn't seem to be fake, Ajien took back the windmill and put it on the hat again. To say that he is not willing to part with it is not necessarily true, this is just an ordinary windmill. And Nami has grown up too, he won't laugh when he looks at his windmill like when he was a child. This windmill is just one of his thoughts now. He hopes that every time Nami comes back, she can turn away all the unhappy emotions and keep being happy just like when she was a child. Well then, I'll find a piece of cloth later and draw a windmill flag for you myself, how about it? What a shame. Sorata stared at Jien with surprise. Then please, Uncle Jien. Hearing that Ajien was willing to help draw the flag, he was subconsciously happy. This is not because his painting skills are ugly. There is nothing to be ashamed of. It is my honor to draw the pirate flag for the benefactor of our entire Kokoja village. That's okay, I'll go and help you draw the pirate flag first. It can be seen that he is more eager than Sorata, presumably because he is happy to do things for Sorata and the others. Sorata hastily thanked again. Looking at his back in the distance, he joyfully raised the wine gourd and took a sip. Comfortable. Then he lay there basking in the sun like an old man. Advertisement not to mention, the sun in spring, even the sun at noon is so comfortable. The setting sun at dusk scatters warm light. In the center of the village road in Kokoja village, several large piles of bonfires have already been piled up. Around the bonfire, there are grilled meat, fruits and various seafood. The villagers who had been suppressed for a long time let go of all their pretense. Some of them were crying, some were laughing, and some were yelling like crazy. They need to vent so much. The three of Ahua were pulled into the crowd by the young people in the village. Together with the villagers, they danced a simple dance around the bonfire. Beside a bonfire, Sorata sat cross-legged on the ground, drinking from a gourd of wine in his hand. And Kuina was leaning on his shoulder, looking at the crowd around the campfire with a blushing face. She likes this kind of banquet. Although she was busy from noon to dusk, she didn't feel tired at all. Instead, she had a heartfelt sense of satisfaction. This made her, who never drank, drink a few glasses today as an exception. Kuina looked up at Sorata dimly. Well, Sorata. Sorata turned her head to look at Kuina's cute look and asked with a smile, what's wrong? Do you think I should think of a title? What title? Kuina tilted her head and thought about it. Okay. She frowned in distress, thinking left and right, but couldn't figure it out. Then she raised her head and stared at Sorata, with a look of pity in her big beautiful eyes. She grabbed his arm and shook it. I can't think of one, Sorata, you should think of one for me. Okay, don't shake it anymore, if you shake it again, I will fall apart. Sorata looked at Kuina and said with a smile. Our team will be called, Freedom Adventure Group, from now on, and the flag will be a windmill. He stroked his chin and thought for a while, then his eyes lit up. Then I will call you, Statue of Liberty. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, he couldn't help laughing himself. Ha ha ha, Kuina didn't know why Sorata laughed suddenly. But seeing him laugh, she also laughed foolishly. Statue of Liberty? Sounds good equals. Chapter 31 Demon Fruit Power. East Blue. Golame Islands. A boat with a sheep's head is parked on the simple pier outside Kokocha village. A red flag with a yellow windmill painted on it fluttered from the top of the ship's mast. The yellow windmill looks like it is spinning from a distance. Give people enthusiasm and happiness, aboard the Pseudo Mary. Do not. It should be on the Liberty, now, and the five of Sorata woke up early. They stood by the boat and looked towards Kokocha village. Last night, the villagers were too excited to get drunk and unconscious. It seemed that no one would wake up until noon today. Although Sorata and the others drank a little too much last night, because they had been exercising for a long time, they were not as drunk as the villagers, so they woke up early in the morning. Aren't you going to say goodbye? Kuina stared in the direction of the village with a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. Here she felt so happy for the first time. This is different from the joy of strength improvement. This is a kind of joy that makes people feel great satisfaction from heart to spirit. Sorata rubbed Kuina's head, looked in the direction of the village and smiled. There is nothing to say goodbye to, this is just a good memory in our life. And our journey has just begun now, and we are beginning to move towards more unknowns and more adventures. Believe me, we will definitely get more satisfaction and happiness in our future adventures. Having said that, a trace of regret flashed in Sorata's eyes. If there is any regret, there is still one thing, that is, I did not meet Nami. I think she should be on a certain pirate ship right now, fighting thrillingly with the pirates. I've always believed in Sorata. Kuina's eyes showed anticipation after hearing this. The three of Ahua also nodded quickly. They all believe that there must be more beautiful people and scenery on the road of adventure in the future. Sorata withdrew her gaze and turned towards the sea. A voice full of excitement and anticipation sounded. Okay, friends, the Liberty sets sail, and our adventure begins now. Advertisement excited, after leaving the Golame Islands for a day, they returned to their original state. Sorata continues his great career of basking the bow. He basically doesn't train now, because ordinary training equipment is completely useless to him now. All he can do now is to squander armament hockey infinitely, hoping to improve the quality of hockey in Zonkong as soon as possible. Kuina spends most of her time exercising, much like Zoro on the Mary. The rest of the time is spent drinking tea and reading newspapers at the bow, chatting with Sorata and basking in the sun. As for the three of Ahua, they were either in the kitchen or lying on the deck, bragging and farting boredly. The sea is so boring, only those islands full of unknowns can revitalize them. At this moment, Arlo on the observation deck, holding a telescope in his hand, shouted to the bottom. Ship, just ahead at 12 o'clock, found a pirate ship. Hearing Arlo's shout, everyone on board cheered up. There is another kind of fun in this boring sea. Of course I met another pirate group. Since they were all small sailing boats, the speed was very fast, and the two boats met on the sea after a while. Look at the pirate flag on the opposite pirate ship. Ahua held a stack of reward orders in his hand, flipping through them non-stop, and finally stopped on a reward order that was not so conspicuous. He looked up at the pirate flag on the opposite side again, pushed the frame of the mirror, and said calmly. Mad Cow Pirates, Captain, QB Lad, reward, 15 million berry. Then he took out a stack of newspapers from behind, pulled out one of them, and said. Judging from the news in the past few months, QB Lad is a newcomer pirate who only went to sea a few months ago. Pirate rookie? Sorata rubbed his chin, thought about it and said, then this guy offered a reward of 15 million berry for the first time. Either he is strong, or he is a very cruel guy. As he spoke, a cold light flashed in his eyes, obviously he prefers the latter. For East Blue, a place where the average reward does not exceed 10 million, there are only two situations where the reward can be so high for the first time. You must know that Crick only has a reward of 17 million berry. I don't know how cruel this guy did to be offered such a high reward. He looked up at Awa, beckoning him to continue. Advertisement AWA looked at the newspaper and continued. It's only been a few months since this guy went to sea, but he has already robbed 6 small towns. Okay, at this moment, Ahua's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said in a hurried tone. Because every time this guy robs a small town, he will turn into a huge long-haired bull-headed monster, raging madly in the town he robbed. That's why Marine dubbed him a mad cow, the Minotaur. This guy can't be the demon fruit power that Sorata said. Uruo and Atao had no interest in this captain of the mad cow pirates. Anyway, it's not for them to deal with it, but after listening to Ahua's words, they all showed excited expressions in unison. Demon fruit power. This is the first time they met. What they don't know is that they have already seen demon fruit power before. One is the king of S*********, Emporio Ivankov. Ivankov is the miracle man who ate the hormone fruit. His fruit ability can control the body temperature, pigment, growth, and emotions of the human body, transform humans from the inside of the body, and even change gender to become a new human being, that is, If Ivankov used his fruit ability when fighting against Sorata, Sorata must have been defeated faster. There is also the Imazuna, who has been following behind Ivankov, but is also a lightning. Lightning is the new human being changed by Ivankov with fruit ability. He is the scissors man who ate the scissors fruit. The ability is to turn any part of the body into scissors, which can cut anything. And the things he cuts with his ability allow him to use them like cloth for a certain period of time. So far, it's uncertain whether he can slice through living things like he slices through the ground. If he could cut even living things, then his ability would be relatively invincible. The things he can cut are different from op fruit. The things cut by op fruit can be restored. Moreover, the cut human body is no different from usual. But the fruit of scissors is different. This thing can only destroy. If it can be used on the human body, it can easily kill anyone. Thinking about the ability of such a bug, it should be impossible to use it on living things. Chapter 32 Crazy under the class Mad Cow Pirates. At this time, the deck of their ship was full of pirates. These pirates are the pirate partners that QB Lad has found in the past few months, and they are actually just gangsters in the town he robbed. These guys are still in a coma because they played too late last night. Only the watchtower and a few pirates in the wheelhouse are still faithfully doing their jobs. In fact, they also wanted to be like those guys on the deck, but who told them to be on duty today. They have no special positions on board, and they are all on duty in rotation. At this moment, the utility pirates on the observation deck discovered the Liberty. Directly ahead, we found the pirate ship. Holding the binoculars, he saw a pirate flag hanging on the opposite ship, which he had never seen before, and he just lazily shouted to the bottom and didn't take it seriously. However, when he thought of how bloodthirsty and cruel their captain was to other ships and people, even if he was one of his own, he couldn't help but shudder. He turned his head to look at the fast-approaching Liberty, silently mourning for the people on the opposite ship. What a poor guy. On the endless sea, I just met their pirate group. Thinking about it, a bloodthirsty light flashed in this guy's eyes. How much better would it be for someone who could be approved by QB Lad and thus board the ship? These guys are all a bunch of lawless, evil bastards, villains. Captain's cabin. The snoring sounds one after another, like thunderstorms rolling across the sky before a shower, kept spreading to the outside. On the sofa, a middle-aged man was lying on it and sleeping soundly. A middle-aged man, about 35 years old, unremarkable. If there is anything special, it is only the explosive muscles and the countless large and small scars on the naked body. Presumably this is the captain of the Mad Cow Pirates, QB Lad. Even if this guy fell asleep, he exuded an extremely ferocious aura like a large beast. Captain outdoors. A half-assed pirate, hesitating whether to wake up their captain. In the Mad Cow Pirates, there is no one who is not afraid of QB Lad. Squeak. He only hesitated for a moment, but firmly pushed open the dilapidated wooden door of the captain's cabin. Compared to discovering pirates and not reporting, waking up QB Lad is not a big deal. Cubby Lad wants fame, wants to surpass Arlong's and Crick's fame, wants to be the best in the East Blue. So this guy keeps attacking various small towns, as well as other pirate groups, including merchant ships. As a member of the Mad Cow Pirates, of course he knows this. He pushed open the door, walked over to QB Lad very carefully, and first shouted a few words softly. Can't wake up. Advertisement. I had no choice but to yell to QB Lad loudly, Captain, Captain. Okay. The snoring stopped suddenly. QB Lad opened his blood-red eyes, and he stared at the dragon suit pirate, his face full of hostility. He didn't speak, just stared at the dragon suit pirate quietly. If this guy doesn't say what he is interested in, then there is no need for this guy to exist on his pirate ship. Staring at QB Lad's blood-red eyes, the dragon suit pirate broke out in cold sweat. He lowered his head, not daring to look at QB Lad, and spoke quickly. Captain, a pirate ship is found right ahead. Pirate ship? Hearing this, QB Lad put away the hostility on his face, and he sat up straight without haste. He took out his cigar and lit it, taking a deep breath. Then he stood up, took the brown coat on the side, and put it on his body. Let's go. Go and see who is on the other side. With that said, he walked out excitedly. I hope the other side can let him do his best. As the two ships met, they both furled their sails at the same time and came to rest on the sea. The three of Awa stared straight at the tall man on the bow of the opposite boat. Their eyes were full of curiosity. Is this demon fruit power? It's not surprising. And Sorata jumped directly onto the opposite boat and stood on the opposite bow rail. This time, he mainly wanted the three of Ahua to take a good look at Devil Fruit's abilities. It is also a reference for them to become demon fruit power in the future. It's not to fight this pirate group who is nothing in his eyes. He grinned and said to QB Lad in admiration, "Yo, QB Lad, the mad cow with a bounty of 15 million berry. It's terrible. You guy, who do you think you are facing?" At this time, a pirate stood up and yelled at Sorata. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Sorata was mocking their captain just now. Okay. Sorata turned her head to stare at the half-assed pirate, her eyes widening. Roll. He has no interest in these dragon suit pirates. His eyes mixed with Conqueror's hockey directly stunned the dragon suit pirate. Advertisement looking at the bang, the dragon suit pirate who suddenly fainted. The other pirates behind all took a breath. What is this? One stare can knock a man out. This is too scary. They looked up at Sorata, shock in their eyes. QB Lad glanced at the fallen dragon suit pirate, and a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. It's rubbish. He also felt a bit of momentum just now. But he didn't take it once, just stunned one of his subordinates, not killing him. He looked up at Sorata and shouted. Report your name, kid, the great Captain Mad Bull, don't kill the unknown. Of course this is just a joke of this guy. This guy became crazy, even killed his subordinates, he was a complete lunatic. Me? You may call me a partner of justice, Sorata introduced herself solemnly. Stop joking, isn't it ridiculous for the pirate to say justice? QB Lad yelled at Sorata. A pirate is a pirate, if you want to do justice, why don't you become a marine? Stop fooling people here, he hates justice, hates righteous people. Because he never felt justice, he was caught by human traffickers at a very young age and sold to nobles. In all his decades of slavery, he had never felt the kindness of the world. From childhood to adulthood, he was either abused or on the way to be abused. His master, including everyone in his town, had never treated him as a human being. So he is full of hatred for this world, think everything should be destroyed. After he inadvertently ate the yak fruit, this idea became more determined. After gaining the ability, the first thing he did was to kill his master's family. Then he slaughtered the town he was in. When he saw the person he would bow down and look up to in the past, suddenly prostrate at his feet, begging him to let go of the scene. He was completely insane. This feeling of dominating others fascinated him deeply. He wants to use this power to rule the entire East Blue. He wants everyone to feel the pain he felt. Chapter 33 a little boring, isn't it? Sorata was a little baffled to see QB Lad react so violently after hearing him say partner of justice. Looking at how much this guy hates the word justice, he couldn't have been hurt by Marine. Sorata stroked her chin for a moment, then raised her head and shouted at him. Hey, hurry up, make a move, let me see your ability. From the strong smell of blood emanating from this guy, one can know that this guy must have killed not too few people. No wonder this guy didn't appear in the comics, he should have been executed by Marine long ago. Since you want to die so much, I will help you. Saying that QB Lad suddenly turned into a Tauren in the form of a Tauren. The pirates behind him suddenly gained confidence when they saw QB Lad's transformation. Their captain is a monster with demon powers. Seeing the Tauren that QB Lad turned into, Sorata couldn't help but burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. Why don't you guys wear an iron ring on your nose? That would make you look more like the Bull Demon King. Ha 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 ha, Iron Ring? The Bull Demon King? Although he didn't know what the Bull Demon King was, the word Iron Circle still stimulated QB Lad. Especially Sorata's undisguised laugh, which made him completely angry. What? He raised his head to the sky and roared angrily, exhaling white air continuously from his nose. Looking at the angry QB Lad, the half-assed pirate at the back blushed and roared excitedly. Come on, Captain. Tear that arrogant brat to shreds. In their cognition, the angry QB Lad was the strongest person in the world, and even the Marine who came to hunt them down was easily killed by him. Hearing the cries of his subordinates, QB Lad stopped yelling, lowered his head, fixed his blood-red eyes on Sorata, kicked his legs hard on the deck, and rushed towards Sorata like a sharp sword. This guy hasn't looked at him since he got on the boat, his eyes are full of indifference and disdain, with a haughty attitude. Now even more laughing at him, it's really courting death. He didn't know how long he hadn't seen this kind of look, or heard the laughter of others. Since he got the fruit ability, everyone he meets has an expression of fear for him, even Marine is no exception. Why does this kid dare to look at him like this and laugh at him? The last time he saw this look was when he was a slave. So there is no one alive in the town where he was a slave. He believed that this kid was no exception. As the distance drew closer, looking at Sorata who was close at hand, QB Lad's eyes flashed with extremely bloodthirsty light, and he roared loudly. Advertisement, look straight at me. B***********. D. He firmly clenched his sandbag-sized right fist, and the muscles and veins on his arm protruded, making his entire arm swell. Then the fist was pulled back, facing Sorata's head, and smashed it quickly. Staring at Sorata as if the next moment he would smash his bloody head. There was a look of extreme excitement on his face. He enjoyed the blood-splattered scene, it would give him extreme pleasure. Okay, at this moment, a sudden bang interrupted his fantasy. He felt that his fist was not hitting the opponent's head, but hitting a steel plate. His vision quickly returned to reality, and he saw that in front of his fist, a palm that seemed small compared to his fist was standing motionless in front of him, preventing his fist from moving forward at all. No way. It took the captain's full punch so easily. The half-assed pirates who were still full of excitement just now, their smiles froze on their faces. It's not like they haven't seen someone who can take a full punch from QB Lad, but isn't that Marine General who received the punch also want to vomit blood? How can it be as simple as Sorata, who was so calm and breezy, as if what he blocked was not a fist, but a fallen leaf? So simple that he didn't even stop laughing. Is this the strength? Sorata stopped laughing, turned to stare at QB Lad and mocked, it's just such a little power that makes you swell like this? Don't be so arrogant, brat. QB Lad stared at Sorata with an ugly face. He was not stupid, he could feel the gap between him and Sorata. But he will not bow his head, nor will he admit defeat. Because from the moment he went to sea, he swore that he would never bow his head to anyone again in his life. He withdrew his fist, took a few steps back, and tore off his shirt, revealing the dense scars on his body. Seeing the scars all over QB Lad's body, Sorata knew why this guy hated justice so much. These scars can be seen at a glance that they have accumulated over the years. Judging from the type and size of the scars, it is impossible for them to be left by the battle. Then there is only one possibility. That is, this guy was a former slave. Only nobles can leave so many scars on a person without killing them. Sorata looked at QB Lad, put away the smile on his face, and frowned slightly. He wasn't going to waste time on this guy. Originally, he wanted to have a good time, but after seeing the scars on this guy, he changed his mind. He could laugh at QB Lad now, but he couldn't laugh at the guy's past. QB Lad raised his head and roared loudly, his black hair swelled wildly, and he completely turned into a huge yak in the blink of an eye. The yak, with its mouth wide open, spoke loudly to Sorata. Little devil, I am a yak man who ate Zone Niu fruit yak form. Not only do I have infinite strength, I also have a pair of horns that can pierce anything. Advertisement. As he spoke, he landed on all fours, lowered his head, and with the horns facing Sorata, he rushed towards Sorata quickly. Go to hell, brat. Boom, the same palm, the same seat, also blocked QB Lad's incomparable blow in the same light and descriptive way. Sorata looked at QB Lad, slapped his palm hard, and easily ejected QB Lad, falling to the deck behind with a bang. QB Lad lay on the ground, shaking his head non-stop. He felt as if his head had been hit by a meteorite, his eyes were full of stars, and his mind was a mess. The half-assed pirates looked at QB Lad, who fell to the ground, and didn't dare to take a breath. They stared up at Sorata in horror, howling inwardly. What kind of monster is this guy? The captain is like a toy in front of this guy, playing with it wantonly. Sorata jumped off the railing and walked over to QB Lad. As he walked, all the half-assed pirates on the ship rolled their eyes and fainted to the ground. I don't know what your past is like, and I don't want to know. I only know that what you have done these past few months is enough to send you to hell. Talking about the expansion of his space domain, he imprisoned QB Lad in place, and did not give him time to speak at all. He was going to end the game. Kind of boring, isn't it? In this world, various tragedies happen every day, and there are many people who are more miserable than this guy. I haven't seen these people suddenly blackened into crazy murderous demons. He was in the dark and suddenly gained power, and he wanted to take revenge on the whole world, so he didn't comment much. After all, if you have not suffered from others, don't persuade others to be kind. He only knows that the road is chosen by himself, and since he has chosen, he has to endure all kinds of hardships on this road until he dies. And what this guy did was 1,000 times worse than his master. So no sympathy. Sorata pulled out Zon Kong and slashed at QB Lad's head. Then retract the knife and quickly return to the Liberty. Don't care about the mad cow pirates anymore. Seeing that Sorata was in a bad mood, the three of Ahua didn't ask much. They quickly lit the torches, threw them on the mad cow pirate's ship, and set sail. And Kuina stayed by Sorata's side, holding his hand, without saying a word, just looking at him tenderly. When Sorata came back to his senses, Liberty had already sailed for a certain distance. Behind him were the mad cow pirates who were constantly engulfed by the fire. He turned to look at Kuina, put his hand on her head and rubbed it, and a smile returned to his face. Don't worry, I'm fine. He has long known that the noble class in this world is disgusting, and he is ready for it. But the first time I saw the encounter with the slaves, I still felt very uncomfortable. After all, he had never seen a body with so many scars. Chapter 34. Value a small goal. Just when Sorata and the others encountered the mad cow pirates. Naval headquarters, discussing their affairs, in a large office in the tall building in the middle of naval headquarters. This time, not only the three of Sengoku, but all the vice admirals in the marine as long as they stay in the headquarters are basically sitting in this office. They sat in 2 rows on the floor, and Sengoku, sitting at the top on the right. Sengoku looked at the only person standing in the field and said, Branu, tell me, what's going on in this big meeting? Yes. Marshal. Branu gave a military salute. They usually call Sengoku Mr. Sengoku in private, but they still call him Marshal in public. Branu straightened his face and said seriously, this time there are mainly 2 things. The first thing is about an East Blue pirate group. The second thing is about Fire Fist Ace. Wait, Branu. At this moment, a muscular burly man with eyes open as well as eyes closed on the right, with a thick brown beard, wearing a double-breasted orange suit with a deep red tie, smoking a cigar, smiled and called Branu to stop. What's the matter, Lord Huashaoshan? Branu looked at Huashaoshan suspiciously. It's nothing, I'm interested in Ace, but East Blue's pirate group, is there anything special about it? Huashaoshan bluntly asked the doubts of most vice admirals in the field. It's not that they look down on East Blue, it's just that East Blue hasn't had a pirate they want to take seriously since Roger, the Pirate King. The vice admirals all turned to look at Branu. My lords, don't worry, what I'm going to talk about next is this gang of pirates. He turned sideways and pointed to some pictures on the blackboard. In addition to the photos that appeared in Sengoku's office last time, there are also photos of the dragon pirates on the blackboard. And one of them is a close-up photo of the beheaded Colonel Mouse. I don't know when these guys went to shoot, they took the money and set fire to Arlong Park. So to take pictures, it should be when Sorata and Huina went to Ahua and the other three to move money. Branu pointed to the photo of Sorata and the Creek pirates confronting each other and said, the first time I discovered this group of people was when they were fighting the Creek pirates. Then he pointed to the Kuina, the Sorata, and the picture of the huge ship that was cut in half. And after analysis, their captain Sorata should be a great swordsman, and this little girl Kuina should be at least a swordsman. Great swordsman? At this time, the vice admirals all let go of their contempt, and a trace of solemnity flashed in their eyes. Branu glanced at Sengoku, and continued, because they didn't find any dangerous behavior last time, and they didn't fly the pirate flag, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Sengoku nodded, and said, well, we discussed this matter last time. Since it's not a big deal, we didn't inform everyone. We only informed the branches of East Blue. Then his eyes flashed, and he said seriously, but this time is different, this time the government asked us to issue a reward order. Advertisement. As soon as he got the news, he investigated the whole thing through Marine in East Blue. Of course, I also know about the collusion between Colonel Mouse and the Dragon Pirate. Regarding this matter, it is okay to say that the mouse is not dead, but if the mouse is dead, it is not just a matter of pirates. According to the meaning of the world government, it is obvious that the matter of rats should not be known to the public, even within Marine, it should be played down as much as possible. After all, it's disgraceful, isn't it? Go on Branu. Sengoku stared at Branu and ordered, okay, Marshal. Branu turned and pointed to the rest of the photos and said, from these photos, we can see that after Sorata's gang defeated Creek, they first went to the sea restaurant Barati. From their sailing route, it can be easily seen that they originally headed directly for the town of Rog. But for some unknown reason, they suddenly turned from Barati to the Golame Islands, and found the dragon pirates who had been stationed there. Dragon pirates? Huashaoshan asked, is it the pirate group formed by the Murlocs who are in the Sun Pirates with Shichibukai, Shanghai Jinbei? Yes, Lord Huashaoshan. Branu Kaido. Arlong, the captain of the dragon pirates, was originally imprisoned in Impel Down, and was released by Jinbei with the privilege of Shichibukai. Pointing to the photo of the dragon pirates, he continued, their captain Arlong and the Cadres Kruby, Chu, and Hachi are all crew members of the Sun Pirates. I just said why this guy looks so familiar, it turns out to be Arlong the Murloc. Huashaoshan nodded, and then said, I'm sorry Branu, you continue. I caught this guy in Impel Down 6 years ago. I'm just curious, why he went to East Blue again. He is the Vice Admiral of New World, he basically doesn't pay attention to the affairs of the world, and he is a little pirate with a reward of 20 million. I don't know that Arlong was released and formed a pirate group. Okay, Master Huashaoshan. Branu paused for a moment, then continued, from the analysis of the situation, they either went directly to the evil dragon, or they got some news and went there. As for the reason, I don't know for the time being. He knows the reason, but he can't say, a pirate went there to defeat the dragon and liberate the villagers there. Then what happened to the death of Colonel Mouse? Then another vice admiral asked, as for Colonel Mouse. To be honest, he doesn't care about the death of a black sheep like the mouse. If he wasn't killed by Sorata and his gang, the headquarters would not let him go. But since the mouse was dead, it was another accident. World government is not planning to let Sorata and his gang go for the sake of face. Anyway, for them, it's just one more pirate group. Branu thought for a while and decided to follow the script. The world government said that the mouse was ordered to hunt down the evil dragons, and happened to meet Sorata's gang and was killed. Is that so? Marine Present was not an idiot either, this mouse looked like a worthless creature, how could he dare to attack the dragon pirates? Although they knew there was a problem, they didn't ask. In world government and Marine, there are many things that cannot be asked. Pointing to the last photo, Branu said, this is the latest photo. The pirate flag has been hung on their ship. It seems that the pirate group has been completely established. Advertisement. He pushed his glasses, turned his head, and said loudly with a serious face, they killed the Marine compatriots this time, they are provoking the face of Marine and the world government, we must fight back. He paused, looked at the vice admirals in the field and said, this time I'm here to discuss how to set a reward for them. Meanwhile, the Marine vice admirals were all silent at this time. At first glance, this matter is the task of the world government. Let them discuss. How to negotiate, they know shit. It is unreasonable for a great swordsman to have done nothing outrageous. It's settled, and it's useless. They pondered for a while, and then, as if they had agreed, they all looked up at Sengoku. It's your turn to FK Sengoku-san. Feeling the eyes of the vice admirals, Sengoku's mouth twitched. It was because it was difficult to handle that he called all these vice admirals to discuss it. What is the meaning of everyone looking at him now? Sengoku knew he couldn't hide, his eyes flashed, he stared at the photo on the blackboard and said. The government is dissatisfied with less opening, and it is unreasonable to open more. He lowered his head and pondered for a while, then 70 million. Then he turned his attention to Kuina's photo. As for this little girl, it's 30 million, round up for their pirates. The surrounding vice admirals watched Sengoku make a decision and nodded in unison. Now that Sengoku has made a decision, it means that the initial reward of this group of pirates is 100 million. 100 million. Never before has the pirate group been offered so many rewards as soon as they set out to sea. For the reward of 100 million, most vice admirals were just a little surprised. After all, it has nothing to do with them. But for vice admiral, a branch in the first half of the Grand Line, I still have a little concern. From the route of this group of people, it can be seen that they will come to the Grand Line in a short time, and they may have an intersection with them by then. Let's not talk about 100 million, after all, this is a pirate group with a great swordsman, it's hard not to care. Oh, by the way, Lord Marshal, since you have offered rewards, have you also taken their titles as well? Then Branu spoke to Sengoku. If you want me to do everything, what do you want you to do? Sengoku took a deep breath, suppressed the desire to complain in his heart, and said perfunctorily, boys are called silver hair, girls are called blue hair. Everyone twitched their lips in unison. Hey, you are too perfunctory. Why don't you be so casual? But seeing the gloomy aura emanating from Sengoku, they still didn't dare to speak. They stared at pictures of Sorata and Kuina on the blackboard. Can't help but sigh. It's amazing. Looks like the Grand Line is going to be busy again. Chapter 35. An ordinary marine on an ordinary island. What the marines were discussing, Sorata and the others didn't know at all, and there was no need to know. They were now looking at the distant island with excited faces. This is the 4th day since they left the Golame Islands. Although I encountered the mad cow pirates during this period, it was not much fun. For the next 3 days, facing the unchanging sea, they were like salted fish who had lost their dreams, completely bored. Now that they finally saw an island, it was no wonder they were so excited. After sailing at sea for a long time, as long as they are not born to like to be alone, most people still like to be lively. This is one of the reasons why most pirates like to hold banquets. From the map, this small island is called Puluoshusi, and it is an ordinary small island with a marine branch. Holding the map in his hand, Kuina looked at the coastline in the distance and spoke lightly. She won't be bored on the boat, as long as Sorata is there, it's the same for her anywhere. Marine base? Awa was subconsciously surprised at first. After all, they have formed a pirate group now, and they are still more afraid of marine. Not afraid to fight marine. It's the subconscious reaction of a thief when he meets a policeman. Then he seemed to think of something, his face returned to normal, he straightened his fat belly, and shouted loudly. Whether he has a marine base or something, we haven't been offered a reward, so what are we afraid of? Right, marine can't control us, Adao answered. Kuina glanced at them lightly. Anyway, be careful, it's been so many days, marine should have already offered a reward. Sorata and I are not afraid, but we are afraid that you will be caught by marine and put in prison. Hey, Kuina, why don't you look down on us like this? At this time Arlo came from behind and shouted loudly. Do you have an opinion? No. Seeing Kuina's gaze, Aluo hurriedly shook his head and waved his hands, loudly denying it. Maiden, I almost got carried away. Awa and Adao quickly moved away from Aluo, staring at the front with their eyes intently, making an expression that had nothing to do with them. Sorata withdrew her gaze towards Puluoshu's island, looked at Kuina and smiled. Kuina, it should only be me and you who want to offer a reward this time. It has nothing to do with Awa and the others, so don't worry. After hearing Sorata's words, the 3 of Awa don't know whether they should be happy or unhappy. I always feel being ridiculed by Sorata again. Advertisement. Okay, I know. Kuina looked at Sorata, the corners of her mouth turned up in a smile. Then he said with a slightly mocking tone. Just the 3 of them, even if they want to be rewarded, it's impossible. Listening to Kuina's sarcasm, the 3 of Ahua dared not speak out and trembled coldly. When will they really stand up? Soon the Liberty sailed into the port of Prussia Island. Parking the boat among several fishing boats, they furled the sails, lowered the anchor, and disembarked. Wow, it still feels good to be down to earth. Ahua took the lead and stood on the pier, jumping excitedly on the spot. Why are there so few people? Arlo was smoking a cigarette, looking around. This is a little different from what they thought. I thought it was a lively island, but I didn't expect it to be so deserted. Maybe they're all in the town. Sorata glanced casually at the street ahead. Okay, at this moment, he suddenly glanced at the marine lookout on the right. After a pause, as if nothing happened, he turned his head and said to the 3 of Ahua, Kuina and I went to the tavern to inquire about the news first, just to see if there is any special wine. As he spoke, he shook the wine gourd in his hand, but there was no sound, it seemed that it should be empty. The good wine he packed in, sea restaurant Barati, has long since finished. Although it hasn't been long since he went to sea, his drinking capacity has suddenly increased recently. Although it is not yet at the level of an old alcoholic, it can also be called a young alcoholic. The ordinary rum on their ship is almost like beer to him now. And he really didn't like the smell. So now, he has another interest, which is to look for local wine every time he goes to a place. Don't worry, Sorata, we also have our work to do. You and Kuina go get busy. Well, let's go then. Seeing the back of Sorata and the others going away, the three of Ahua also dispersed to find what they wanted. Awa is going to buy fresh ingredients and fruits, and replenish the fresh water on board by the way. Adao is looking for new ship repair tools and some items that can be used at sea. As for Arlo, advertisement, this guy got into guns recently and wanted to see if there was a better one. The gun he is using now was picked up by the way from the Crete pirates. That is, some ordinary guns, not very good. He complained to Sorata a few days ago why he didn't leave some of the good guns on Crick for him. As a result, he doesn't even have a gun he can take out now. As Sorata and his gang walked into town one by one, they disappeared into the streets. Marine, who was hiding in the lookout pavilion on the right side of the pier, breathed a sigh of relief. Sorata's glance just now almost scared him to death. After all, not everyone has the courage to face the big pirate with a reward of up to 70 million berry. Sorata was the pirate with the highest bounty he had ever seen in his life. Marine issued a reward order, which will be faxed to each branch as soon as possible. Then hand over the reward order to the World News Organization, and use the news organization's newsbirds all over the world to sandwich the latest news and distribute it to the whole world. So the reward orders for Sorata and Kuina first appeared in various branches of Marine. In other places, when the reward order is received, the Marine branch will probably be around a few days in the evening. Of course, some remote places will be slower. The Marine on guard noticed it when the Liberty first entered the port, but the pirate flag without the skull on the ship didn't remind him immediately. He just thought this windmill flag was familiar, and he thought it was a merchant ship he had seen somewhere before. It didn't matter. But when Sorata and the others got off the boat and saw Sorata's iconic silver hair, he was shocked and panicked instantly. It's not so unlucky, is it? He hurriedly took out the arrest warrant issued by the base 2 days ago, and saw the big headshot on it, which was Sorata. Although the sun outside was very warm, no matter how warm it was, it couldn't warm his cold heart. He raised his head again in disbelief, glanced at Sorata cautiously, and then quickly looked away. He didn't dare to look at it for even a second, for fear of being discovered. It's really him. Look at the dazzling 7 on the reward order and the long string of zeros behind it. He felt like he was standing on ice now, and a chill rushed from the soles of his feet to the top of his head, making him shiver. He froze for a while in the lookout booth, then quickly turned around and ran towards the Marine base. This matter has something to do with the lower class of them. Such a big pirate naturally has a tall man to deal with. He's going to find a taller one to top him, although he knows that no one in the small Marine base on Prussia Island can stand up to it. But that's all about the tall ones, don't care about a little patrolman. Well, the plan works. Chapter 36, The Wise Old Man. Squeak. In the silent alley, there was a piercing scream. Sorata and Kuina stood outside the only tavern in this small town, gently pushed open the very old wooden door, and walked in. There was no one in the dimly lit tavern, and it seemed very quiet. All I could see was a wisp of smoke rising from behind the dark bar, and sparks behind the smoke. When I got closer, it turned out that it was an old man with a big beard, lying on a recliner behind the bar, puffing away. The old man heard the sound of the door opening and didn't move. Having opened a tavern on Prussia Island all his life, he has already decided not to open it after this year. After all, when one is old, the son does not inherit his tavern. The old man squinted his eyes and smoked comfortably, just like the master of the landlord's house smoking opium while lying on the bed. It wasn't until Sorata sat on the high stool outside the bar that his eyes opened slightly and he glanced lightly. Boom. Boom. Boom boom boom. Sorata tapped her fingers rhythmically on the bar. He lowered his head and looked at the old man inside the bar through the smoke. The old man seemed to have a story at first glance, and he couldn't hide the breath of time that radiated from his whole body. Master, it's broad daylight, and there are no customers in the store. Why don't you go outside to bask in the sun? Be careful, if you sit in the dark for a long time, your body will get moldy. With a pipe in his mouth, the old man stood up unhurriedly, looking at the two of Sorata through the light of Madara coming in from the window. After he saw Sorata's appearance clearly, he was suddenly taken aback. Then, as if he hadn't found anything, he exhaled smoke rings and said, I'm about to be buried in the earth. It doesn't matter if I stay in the sun or not, but you young people, it's amazing. So, sir, you know us already? Kuina sensed the information in the old man's words. With doubts on his face, he looked at the old man and asked. Do not know. I really don't know you. Kuina stared at the old man closely. What the old man said just now meant that he knew them both. The old man did not answer Kuina. He first exhaled a big mouthful of smoke, took down the pipe with his left hand, and knocked on the bar to knock out the ash in the pipe. Then he continued to smoke the pipe, took out the shredded tobacco, stuffed it into the pipe, and lit the cigarette again. Only then did he raise his head, watching Kuina speak slowly. The Marine who came this morning seems to have chatted with you. Marine? No, look. This is what they left behind. The old man took out 2 arrest warrants out of nowhere and put them on the bar counter. Kuina took it quickly and looked at it. Sorata, it's a reward for both of us. Oh, Sorata replied lightly. Obviously he was not interested in the reward order, but he was more interested in the old man in front of him. He stared at the old man, deliberately asked with a gloomy face, Master, since you know us, aren't you afraid? No? The old man was smoking a cigarette, squinting his eyes, looking at Sorata in a daze. Do I know you? Sorata stared at him for a while, with a smile on his face. Yes, you don't know us, how could you know us? What a clever old man. Advertisement. Obviously the old man is a master at pretending to be confused. He clearly knew the two of Sorata, but pretended not to know each other, just not wanting to ask for trouble. Oh yes, sir. I don't know how far it is from Rog Town. Sorata looked at the old man and asked. Their main route is to go to the town of Rog, and then go to the Grand Line, through the artificial canal on the upside-down mountain. If they hadn't gone to Kokoja village, they should have been on the Grand Line by now. The town of Rog? There is still about a day's voyage? A day's flight? There was excitement in Sorata's eyes. So they'll be going to the Grand Line soon. East Blue was a bit too boring for them, no challenge at all. Seeing Sorata's expression, the old man asked unhurriedly. So you're going to the Grand Line? Okay, it's not so easy to go there. A flash of memory flashed in the old man's eyes. Oh, it looks like you have been to the Grand Line, sir. Sorata knew from the very beginning that the old man had a story. No, the story came. With a curious look on his face, he quickly asked, Can you tell us about the Grand Line experience? The old man took down the pipe, shook the ash, then took a deep breath and said slowly. Old man, I have never been to the Grand Line. When I was young, I wanted to go to the Grand Line, but when I was in the reverse mountain, I couldn't take the artificial canal there, so the boat crashed and people died. If I hadn't been lucky in the end and was rescued by the lighthouse guards on Upside Down Mountain, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come back. Speaking of this, the old man's smoking hand trembled. It seems that the experience at the beginning left him with lingering fears until now. Is it that scary? Hearing this, a trace of surprise flashed across Sorata's face. Terrible. The old man took a puff of cigarette, and then said, There are countless ships going to the Grand Line every year, but only half of them can reach the Grand Line in the end. The sea current that reverses the mountain is not something that ordinary ships can pass through, and the entrance of the artificial canal is very narrow. Without a good navigator, it is impossible to enter at all. Oh, Sorata shrugged indifferently, and immediately lost interest in the old man's experience. He's only interested in the Grand Line thing right now. As for Upside Down Mountain, for them, it's like going to an amusement park to ride a roller coaster. Seeing Sorata's experience with him, the old man had an indifferent attitude to Upside Down Mountain, and he lost the desire to continue talking. Upside Down Mountain is the road to hell for the common man. For the big pirate who is offering a reward of 70 million, it might just be a small waterway. He picked up the glass, wiped it, and poured Kuina a glass of juice and Sorata a glass of wine. The old man has been running the tavern for so many years, and he can tell at a glance who can drink and who can't. Thank you, sir. Kuina served the juice and thanked her. He really doesn't like wine that much, but Sorata is different. Advertisement. He picked up the wine glass, took a sip, nodded first, then shook his head. Seeing Sorata's movements, the old man asked curiously, Boy, what's the matter? Wine is good wine, but not strong enough. Strong? Okay. I don't like to drink wine with too low alcohol content, it feels tasteless. Oh, is that so? The old man held a pipe in his left hand, squinted his eyes at Sorata and asked. Oh, by the way, you came to my dilapidated tavern to chat with an old man like me. Of course not. Sorata took out his wine gourd, put it on the bar, pushed it in front of the old man and said with a smile. We're just here for a drink, please fill me up with the best and strongest wine you have here. Is it full? The old man took the wine gourd and weighed it in his hand. The best wine, it's not cheap to fill it up, don't worry, it's not short of money. Sorata waved at him. That's right, how could you be short of money? The old man shook his head, first suddenly realized, and then returned to his confused expression. I'm just an old man who's going to be buried in the ground, and I don't know anything. He took the gourd and put it on the bar, and fumbled out a small jar from the cabinet under the wine cabinet behind. It could be seen that the wine jar hadn't been touched for a long time, and the stopper and the upper part of the wine bottle were covered with a thin layer of dust. While wiping the dust with the tablecloth, the old man introduced, This wine, you can only brew this small jar every year. So you made it yourself. Sorata saw that there was no label on the wine jar, and asked. I used to be the brewer. Before? Yes, it used to be. Now that I'm old, I can only look at the bar. As for the work of brewing wine, I have already handed it over to my son. After the old man finished wiping, he gently uncorked the wine, and a strong aroma of wine came to his nostrils. Smelling the aroma of wine, Sorata stopped talking, his eyes fixed on the wine jar in the old man's hand. It's no wonder that only such a small jar can be brewed in a year. Just by smelling the aroma of the wine, you know it must be good wine. The old man put down his pipe, took out a funnel from behind, and inserted it into the mouth of the wine gourd. Then he raised the wine jar high. I saw a cyan, transparent like amber wine, slanted down from the wine jar, and slowly flowed into the wine gourd. Sorata looked at the liquor that seemed to be shining with blue light and swallowed involuntarily. He had never seen such a beautiful wine. After pouring out the wine in the wine jar, the old man turned back and put the empty wine jar on the rear wine cabinet. Then he turned around and took the stopper of the wine gourd and pushed the gourd in front of Sorata. "Guest, your wine." Then the old man picked up the pipe again, leaned against the bar and smoked. Sorata took the wine gourd in front of her and shook it. Just a gourd full." He hung the wine gourd back around his waist, looked at the old man and said with a smile, "Since the wine has already been brewed, sir, why don't you say the price?" The old man pondered for a while before he opened his mouth and said, "My drink money is." "Get out of here as soon as possible." Chapter 37. Am I that scary? At this moment, a team of Marines pushed open the door of the bar and walked in. Walking in the front was a bearded man who looked like an old man, but this one was a strong man. He hurried to the bar, looked at the old man nervously and asked, "Father, are you okay?" "He is the son of the brewery," that the old man said, "and he is also the head of the Marine branch in this small town, colonel with a beard." After the bearded man received the news that Sorata's gang had landed on Puluoshu's island, he was not so anxious. Because judging from the information from naval headquarters, this group of pirates is not the kind of pirates who wantonly mess around. Another reason is his own strength, which doesn't allow him to arrest a pirate with such a high reward. For the Sorata group, the Marine branch, what they can do is to monitor them at any time and try not to conflict with them. The task of arresting Sorata's gang is left to Rear Admiral and Vice Admiral of Naval Headquarters. But when he heard that Sorata had gone to his family's tavern, he couldn't sit still. Quickly summoned Marine and rushed over in a hurry. Although Sorata's group seems to be a group of pirates who don't hurt civilians, but pirates are pirates. If they go crazy and hurt his father, it will be bad. Since Marine came in, the old man's demeanor, which had always been calm, suddenly became a little nervous. He didn't look at the beard, he just kept staring at Sorata. Sorata basically knew what was going on with the old man when the bearded man came in. He looked at this scene amusedly, and asked the old man, "Am I that scary?" Following the bearded man into Marine, they all stared at Sorata and Kuina nervously. They didn't speak, which made the whole tavern look tense and dull. The old man stared at Sorata for a while, and gradually relaxed. He is quite good at judging people at such an old age. "It's not that you were terrible, but your reward order is terrible. Old man, I have never really seen a pirate with such a high bounty as you in my life." The old man's funny voice broke the tense atmosphere in the tavern. Sorata turned the chair around and scanned the surrounding Marines, and finally stopped her gaze on the bearded man. "Marine, am I that scary?" His gentle voice did not dispel the tension in Marine's heart. The bearded man stared at Sorata closely, suppressed the fear in his heart and said loudly, "Pirate, don't be too arrogant, our righteous Marine will not be afraid of pirates." He spoke louder and louder and stood upright in the end. He stared at Sorata and growled loudly, "Advertisement. Justice shall prevail. Justice shall prevail." The surrounding Marines subconsciously straightened their backs and yelled loudly. Sorata stared at the bearded man, a smile flashed in his eyes, and he said, "Don't worry, as long as you don't come to disturb us, we will leave after shopping." He also admired this bearded man very much. Such a Marine is a good Marine. Even though they are very scared, they still stand on the front line of the people without hesitation. Sorata didn't pay much attention to the beard. He turned around, smiled at the old man, and said, "Grandpa, we are law-abiding and good citizens. We never take the villagers' stitches, just tell us how much it will cost." The old man regained his calm demeanor. He was smoking a cigarette, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. He slowly stretched out his right hand, spread 5 fingers, and stood in front of Sorata. "What, it turned out to be 50,000, I thought it was too expensive." Staring at the old man's hand, Sorata breathed a sigh of relief, and just as he was about to take out money from his pocket to pay, the old man suddenly spoke. "Boy, it's 500,000, not 50,000. "What?" Sorata stared at the old man, startled. "Old man, how much can you say again?" He deliberately showed a fierce expression. The change of his face startled the Marine next to him. The Marines were sweating coldly, staring at the old man together, shouting in their hearts, "Master, don't seek death, the opposite is a big pirate." The uncle still had that unhurried demeanor. He slowly took down the pipe and knocked on the bar. Boom. Boom. The clear knocking sound was like knocking on Marine's heart. They all stiffened their bodies and looked at the old man nervously. The old man ignored Marine's nervousness. He looked at Sorata and said firmly, 500,000, not a cent less. The Marines looked at the uncle. Their hearts were trembling, and they could all foresee that Sorata was about to go into a rage. But they waited for a while, but did not wait for Sorata's anger. Instead, Sorata and the old man arrived, bargaining like the aunts in the vegetable market. "Old man, I have tolerated you for a long time, don't be so arrogant." "What happened to the arrogance? Advertisement, you hit me. Anyway, I'll put it here, 500,000 yuan, not a lot." "Hey, I can't control you anymore, can I?" Sorata rolled up his sleeves and chatted with the uncle for a while, and finally cut the price to 300,000. Finally Sorata paid the money with a frustrated face. On the other hand, the old man was counting the money with a proud expression on his face. It can be seen from this that Sorata lost the price war in the end. Sure enough, the ginger is still old and spicy. It wasn't until Sorata and the others walked out of the tavern that the Marines heaved a sigh of relief. It's not that they are cowardly. Who told the other party's reward order to be so scary? The old man was smoking a cigarette and glanced at the bearded man lightly. Then he took down his pipe and tapped the bearded man on the head. They're all gone. What are you looking at? If you don't go back, you want to stay with the old man for dinner. The bearded man was knocked back to his senses by this knock. He looked at the old man excitedly. Father, aren't you a great expert? I see you chatting and laughing happily with that big pirate without changing your face. It's really majestic. Also, he paid for the drink obediently. While talking, he analyzed seriously. No wonder so many people came to you to buy wine in the past. It turns out that you have always been a hidden peerless master. After the analysis, he nodded and looked at the old man with an expression that I understood everything. The more the bearded man talked, the more ugly the old man's expression became, and in the end he just stayed where he was. After being dazed for a while, he shook his head, raised his pipe and knocked at the bearded man. I'm afraid you were a fool. Didn't you see that I was also nervous at first? You are still a master. Look at me as a master, don't smash your stupid head. The bearded man watched the old man's movements, and hurriedly stepped back and rushed out of the tavern, and the rest of the Marines quickly followed. The old man put down his pipe, looked at the empty tavern through the green smoke, and thought for a while. He lay back on the recliner again, squinted his eyes and swallowed the clouds. The whole tavern returned to its original state, dark and silent. At this time, from the bar, the old man and Sorata sighed when they first met. Young man now, it's incredible. Chapter 38 The Island That Suddenly Fell from the Sky. Proskus Island. On the street of the small town on the island. Sorata and Kuina met, and Iowa, who was carrying big bags and small bags, was heading towards the port. Behind them, the bearded man led a team of Marines to follow from a distance. They were just monitoring and did not come up to disturb them. It seems that they really listened to what Sorata said in the tavern. Sorata held a large bag of fruit in his left hand and his reward order in his right hand, watching as he walked. He was quite speechless about their perfunctory titles on the reward order. What the hell? Silver hair, blue hair, do you want to be so perfunctory? Marine felt that he was not qualified, or that he was not strong enough. As a result, Marine can't spend more energy to get a better title. So I picked one up by the way. He stroked his chin and thought about it. Or is this a conspiracy by Marine? Marine wants them and the red hair to compete for the position of the strongest hair pirate group. Okay, Sorata nodded. He seemed to know Marine's plot. How insidious, Sengoku-san. This seems to be Sengoku's strategy. If Sengoku heard this, he would be so angry that he would spit out a few mouthfuls of old blood. Wind reviews are harmful. He, Sengoku, is the most upright person in Marine. This time it's really just perfunctory, not some conspiracy. Okay. Sorata suddenly looked up into the sky and stopped. His face, which was still smiling just now, was instantly full of gloom. The Marine in the rear stopped when they saw Sorata and panicked. What happened? Do not know. The silver-haired gang stopped suddenly. It's not changing your mind. You want to rob our town. It's all quiet. The bearded man roared, his eyes fixed on Sorata all the time. He could feel the gloomy aura on the other party. It's just that he didn't know why Sorata's breath suddenly changed. He nervously followed Sorata's gaze to the sky. Kuina and Ahua noticed Sorata's strangeness and looked up to the sky. If Sorata's face can change drastically, then there must be some great event about to happen. Sure enough, after a while, in their line of sight, a great fireball with a fiery red tail emerged from the clouds. Looking at the direction where the fireball fell, it was undoubtedly the small island below them. Hey, just kidding. At this time, Marine behind the beard also looked up and found the fireball. It's in broad daylight, it can't be a dream. Some Marines even wiped their eyes in disbelief. But when they looked up again and saw the fireball approaching, they were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Advertisement, their eyes widened and they couldn't stop muttering. Impossible, impossible, impossible. Illusion, illusion, it must be an illusion. The bearded man still maintains his basic rationality. He suppressed the panic in his heart, and quickly turned around and shouted at the other Marines. Don't be inked here, get up, and go and inform the villagers. How many can you run? Individual. As he spoke, he ran towards the houses on both sides first. Now is not the time for ink marks, this meteorite will fall down soon. They can't stop them, they can only notify everyone as soon as possible. How many can escape? Sorata's face is now so gloomy that it drips water. He found that it was not a meteorite at all, but a small island. Broken houses and some trees can also be found on top of the meteorite. This is definitely man-made. How can there be one after another soaring into the sky? I remembered that I was still saying a few days ago that Corgi Island was unlucky. I didn't expect the retribution to come so soon. He can guarantee that when the island lands, the 5 of them will be safe. But, he turned his head to look at the Marine behind him and the villagers rushing out of the house, scurrying around like headless flies. Listening to the cries of children coming from farther behind, the angry cursing of adults, and the collision of people in panic. He couldn't let the island fall down. Sorata, hearing Kuina's shout, Sorata turned to meet Kuina's flustered eyes. She's not worried about her own safety, she's worried about the town. If the island is allowed to fall, at least 90% of the residents in this small town will die. Is there a way? She has always believed that Sorata is omnipotent. She believes that Sorata will definitely be able to do it this time. Sorata reached out and rubbed his head, looked up at the approaching fireball, and said firmly, "Do what I can to keep the island from falling on the town." He then said seriously, "We can't let it get any closer, or even if we cut it up, it will cause a lot of casualties to the villagers on the island." While speaking, he disappeared instantly, leaving only a large basket of fruit on the ground. But now no one cares about the fruit, they all look at the sky nervously. Sorata teleported to the side of the island, staring at the giant, thinking a lot for a moment. It's very simple for him to follow up with this thing, but he just can't finish it. This is not a small island, not a small meteorite, and his space domain can only control a radius of 20 meters. If you have the highest level of hockey skills, it is actually very easy to break this thing. He has a lot of hockey now, but unfortunately, the quality and skills are still not at the highest level. When hockey is used to the highest level, it can deal internal damage to the enemy. This kind of hockey use technique that allows hockey to flow like gas, and even in the end, can strike and destroy the enemy's interior, is called emission in Wano Kuni. It's a pity that this thing is the ultimate hockey skill that can only be mastered after a lot of actual combat. He has been nesting in the dojo, where can he master this highest hockey technique? In fact, he has already obtained the method of practicing emission skills from Koshiro. However, this is of no use. Without a lot of actual combat, even if you are King Luffy, it is impossible to master emission. There is only one way now, and that is to use hard power to shred this small island. He can teleport around the island hundreds or thousands of times in an instant. Send out white cuts and 1,000 cuts to chop up the island. Advertisement, but this method made him hesitate a little. Because of this move, he will consume a lot of energy. As soon as he teleported into the air, he had already discovered that there were a large number of islands in the clouds above. Even more so, on the middlemost island, there is a figure like a lion exuding the aura of ruling the world. The moment he sensed that breath, he knew who the other party was. In East Blue, like a breath of a lion, a floating island. He doesn't know who these messages are, so he has been watching One Piece for so many years. This old fellow, he didn't come sooner or later, but he just popped up at this time. Maybe it was just to find him, it's really unlucky. A trace of anger flashed across Sorata's gloomy face. If you want to find him, come and fight with dignity. What's the matter with throwing an island first when you meet? Throw it away. It is also thrown on small inhabited islands. Looking at the island passing by, Sorata put away the resentment towards Golden Lion in her heart. I don't have time to think about these things. The old guy will clean up later. He believes that even if he expends a lot of physical strength, he can defeat him. Staring at the rapidly falling island in front of him, Sorata's pupils shrank suddenly, and the nebula flowed in his eyes. He held the Zonkong knife handle with his right hand, and silently launched a teleportation. For a moment, as if time stood still, countless Sorata appeared around the island. They drew their swords together and swung countless huge silver-gray slashes at the island. Then all of Sorata's shadows became one, standing where he was, as if he had never moved. But judging from Sorata's slightly short panting, he still moved. Ding, this is the sound of a knife being sheathed. Shun 1,000 cut. Sound breaks the still time. Then I saw the falling island, which suddenly stopped in the air, emitting countless rays of dazzling light from the center of the island to all directions. Then, with a huge roar, the island exploded instantly, split into countless small stones, dragged its fiery red tail, and shot towards all directions. Sorata stood quietly on the spot, adjusting her breath to face the golden lion flying towards this side. The shock wave generated by the explosion, as soon as it reached his side, automatically swiped to both sides, as if running water met the blade. The fleeing villagers and marine on the island stopped when they heard the shocking explosion and looked up at the sky. I saw a picture that they will never forget in this life. I saw the falling meteorite suddenly exploded, and the sky was covered in dust in an instant, making the world black all of a sudden. Then, countless small stones rushed out from the dust all over the sky. These rocks dragged their long fiery red tails, shooting around like shooting stars. This scene is like a super big firework, very beautiful. And where the meteorite was, there was a figure looming in the dust. Wow, is it a god? It must be. Only the gods have this ability? Some of the villagers who survived the catastrophe hugged their heads and cried loudly, some laughed loudly, and some collapsed on the ground and gasped continuously. The bearded man stared blankly at the sky, then suddenly he collapsed to the ground as if he had lost all his strength. This feeling of surviving after a catastrophe reminded him of 20 years ago. While in a daze, he suddenly thought of something, turned his gaze to Sorata and his group, and found that there was no sign of Sorata. He was taken aback again. Then he looked up at the figure in the air and murmured, "It's really scary." Silver Hair Sorata, Chapter 39 From the Heart, Distant Terror. East Blue. On the clouds above Prussia Island, there are more than a dozen floating islands floating. The largest of these islands was the seat of the Golden Lion's court. The island was originally called Vermejo, and was discovered by the Golden Lion after escaping from Impel Down. He found that there were many animals on the island that ate plants with IQ ingredients and turned violent, so he used his own ability to lift the entire island into the sky and use it as his own floating island. and renamed the island Strong World. For 20 years, he hid his whereabouts and studied IQ with his trusted deputy, Dr. Indigo, and lived on the floating island to plan his comeback. He plans to liberate these animals to the East Blue, born by Roger, who has the name of the weakest, and let them wreak havoc, so as to show his revenge on the world government. On Strong World, at this time, a banquet is being held in the Golden Lion's palace. Golden Lion with long golden hair and a rudder on his head, wearing a traditional orange and yellow striped Japanese suit, is on the platform under the throne, dancing with his deputy Dr. Indigo and a gorilla. Golden Lion has become a little nervous since he put the rudder on his head. Sometimes this guy will suddenly be in a daze, or make many funny moves such as answering questions that are not relevant. Apart from dancing, I usually don't have any special hobbies. Under the throne of the palace, there are 2 rows of weird pirate captains sitting cross-legged. The captains of these pirates are the dragon pirates that Golden Lion has subdued at will for the past 20 years. They can't be counted as a member of the Golden Lion pirates yet, because the Golden Lion hasn't formed a new pirate group yet. Apart from their lack of strength, these guys have other advantages of pirates. Cruel, ruthless, bloodthirsty, committing all kinds of evil, lawless. And what Golden Lion likes is precisely the aura of real pirates in these guys. So he only treats these guys as subordinates, not partners. The pirate captains watched the Golden Lion dance, drank wine, and laughed wantonly. What? The dancing Golden Lion stopped suddenly. The island he controlled was chopped up, so he knew it immediately. This small island was originally dropped to test Sorata. A smile flashed in his eyes, and then he grinned and laughed out loud. Gia ha 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 ha. That silver-haired boy is impatient. He smiled and took out his cigar, lit it, took a puff, then turned to his deputy Dr. Indigo and said, I'll go and see, that silver-haired boy, you continue the banquet. Kale. Advertisement. Dr. Indigo laughed and shook his body, telling the Golden Lion in the form of mime performance, go. Okay. Golden Lion looked at him with question marks on his face. Seeing that Golden Lion didn't understand what he meant, Indigo jumped around in a hurry and made a long series of puff sounds similar to farting. Puff. Just when Golden Lion couldn't help but curse, this guy suddenly spoke. I see, you go, so you can talk. Golden Lion watched Indigo startled. Gia ha 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 ha. Then the guy laughed loudly, shook his cloak, and quickly flew out of the palace. A reward order for Sorata slowly floated down on the spot. The pirates didn't pay much attention to Sorata's reward order and continued their eating, drinking and merrymaking. Just a little pirate with a reward of 7,000 W berry. For the Golden Lion, it's nothing. Golden Lion was once as famous as One Piece, Gore D. Roger and Whitebeard, Edward Newgate, and was a legendary pirate with destructive power. He is also the first pirate to escape in the history of Impel Down. Ground. The bearded man who had just breathed a sigh of relief suddenly bulged out his eyes and looked into the air in horror. As the smoke gradually dispersed, a golden figure was floating opposite Sorata. And the main gaze of the bearded man was this golden figure. He stared at the golden figure, as if he saw something particularly frightening, terrified to the extreme. Are you kidding me? How could you be in East Blue, old man? How could he forget this legendary pirate who caused huge casualties to naval headquarters 20 years ago? 20 years ago, he happened to be training in the headquarters and personally experienced the battle of the Golden Lion's invasion of naval headquarters. If it wasn't because he was too weak to participate in the war, he didn't know if he could survive that war. Advertisement. He still clearly remembers the almost half-destroyed naval headquarters after the war, and the scene of the mountain of corpses and sea of blood. The surrounding Marines looked at the bearded man and yelled madly. They all looked dumbfounded. Master Colonel, this is not crazy, is it? They didn't know the Golden Lion, and if they did, they couldn't see it from this distance. One of the Marines quickly walked over to the bearded man, grabbed his shoulder, and kept shaking. My Lord Colonel, Master Colonel, what's the matter with you, Colonel? The Marine's shout woke up the bearded man, and he froze for a moment, his mind tumbling with thoughts. No time to waste time here. Only he here knows the horror of that golden figure in the sky. He looked up at Golden Lion, suppressing the fear in his heart. Jumping up quickly, he eagerly shouted at the surrounding Marines. Don't take a rest, now is not the time to grind. Hurry up and gather the villagers in the village to the pier, and let's get out of here quickly. The Golden Lion is here, so there may be other islands in the sky above this sea area. If the 2 guys in the sky really had a fight, they could easily be slashed by the opponent's leak, causing heavy casualties. Those 2 guys are both great swordsmen. If the Golden Lion drops another island, none of them will escape. Why? Colonel. The Marines don't know why. I don't have time to explain. Go and call the villagers. If you don't leave, you will die. Hurry up. Seeing the eager and terrified expression of the bearded man, the surrounding Marines became serious. They dispersed quickly and ran to gather the villagers. Although they didn't know why the bearded colonel looked like the sky was falling, they knew that something big was about to happen. Big Beard had to make the decision to evacuate the entire island. Chapter 40. The Man Who Will Rule the Sea from the Air. Looking at the Marines scattered in all directions, the bearded man tidied up his slightly messy clothes because he fell to the ground just now. Then he turned around and walked towards Kuina and the others with a solemn face. He now had to ask for help from the pirates, because the boats in the town can't hold the residents of the entire island. Even with the addition of Marines' warships, it's not enough. Now only with the addition of Sorata and their ships, can they barely finish loading. As long as they leave the range of Prussia Island, they will be safe even without food. Because Proxius Island is only a day's flight from Rog Town. The three of Ahua saw the bearded man walking towards them. His face was full of guard. Sorata's absence made them feel a little insecure. Hey, Marine, what are you doing here? The bearded man ignored them. He looked at Kuina solemnly, paused for a while, and his eyes gradually became firmer. He said to Kuina a little stiffly, I know this request is a bit difficult, but now only you have the ability to help the villagers in the town. He paused, then fell to his knees with a bang. Hey, there's no need to do this. What do you have to say directly? The three of Ahua stared at the bearded man with surprise on their faces. They couldn't figure out what made this Marine so terrified. What made him kneel down to pirates like them? The bearded man raised his head and begged Kuina loudly. Please, can you use your boat to carry the villagers out of this sea area? For the villagers? This guy is such a good Marine. The three of Ahua looked at the bearded man and couldn't help showing a little admiration. Kuina quickly turned around and raised her beard. Instead of immediately responding to the expectation in his eyes, she asked. You know that golden figure? Advertisement. She chopped up the meteorite at Sorata, didn't come back immediately, but stayed in the air, and found out that something was wrong. The golden figure that appeared later and was able to confront Sorata must be a powerful guy. Otherwise, Sorata would not be so solemn, and the bearded Marine general in front of him would not be so afraid. No. The bearded man recalled for a moment, and a look of fear immediately appeared on his face. This old guy is the legendary pirate, Golden Lion Shiki, from 20 years ago. It's the captain of the Flying Pirates, the admiral of the Golden Lion Pirate Fleet, and a lion fruit-capable person, also known as Flying Pirates. Lion fruit? Although the long list of titles of the Golden Lion is bluffing, what Kuina is most interested in now is the fruit ability of the Golden Lion. He looked at the bearded man and asked curiously, Can you tell me what ability lion fruit has? The bearded man quickly explained. Lion fruit ability users, known as floating people, can levitate themselves or objects in the air. Golden Lion can make all inanimate objects he touches float in the air, including islands, and more than that, an island. Hey, just kidding. Ahua poked his head over and asked in surprise, You mean, there are other islands on the clouds? Yes. Seeing the bearded man nodding and giving an affirmative answer, the three of Ahua couldn't help feeling a sense of urgency in their hearts. No wonder the guy is so terrified. Meeting the lost island is like a legendary big pirate who lost a toy. It's strange if he doesn't panic. They looked quickly at Kuina. At this point Kuina finally made a decision. Deciding to leave here first, they can only be Sorata's burden if they stay here. This kind of battle at the top of the sea is not something they can participate in. And even watching the battle has to be far away. Seeing the villagers gathering quickly on the pier, they rushed to help greet them to board the boat. After a while, all the villagers in the village boarded the boat. With full sails, a dozen large and small sailboats and military ships full of villagers in the port, led by the Liberty and Marine warships, headed for the direction of Rog Town quickly. Since Golden Lion came here, he has been smoking a cigarette and staring at Sorata with a smile. Advertisement. He stared at Sorata like a lion staring at its prey. Cold, ruthless, with a touch of curiosity, full of banter and satisfaction. He ignored the villagers and Marine who were evacuating on the island below. In his eyes, weak people are not even qualified to let him look at them squarely. Seeing that Golden Lion didn't make a move immediately, Sorata felt relieved, so he recovered his strength first. After a while, feeling that Sorata's aura had recovered, Golden Lion laughed and said, Gia ha 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 ha. Silver-haired boy, how about joining my pirate team? He found Sorata's reward order from the latest newspaper this morning and felt like God's will. With the further success of the IQ potion, he can already feel that his comeback time is approaching. So he has been wandering around the four seas recently to see if he can find a pirate with potential and ambition to join his newly formed Golden Lion pirate group. And he happened to float over East Blue during this period of time. Unexpectedly, East Blue happened to have a powerful swordsman who just happened to go out to sea. Moreover, this kid is still so young. The first time he went to sea, he achieved the super high reward of 7,000 W berry. Looking at Sorata's young face on the bounty, he couldn't help but think of the guy named Silver Rayleigh on Roger's ship. The same origin, East Blue, the same great swordsman, and that guy was the first partner Roger invited to board the ship, and in the end he was called the right wrist of One Piece. He couldn't help but believe that it was the guidance of fate that guided Sorata to help him realize his ambition. If he could get this silver-haired kid to join his crew, it would be almost like Roger having Rayleigh. He needs the other party's strength, needs the other party to help him realize his ambition to swallow the world. So after discovering that Sorata's route was not too far away from them, he rushed over as fast as he could. And randomly dropped a small island as his test for Sorata. If he couldn't take over the small island he left at will, then Sorata would not be eligible to be invited by him and become his true partner. But what he didn't expect was that Sorata actually accepted his test by directly chopping up the entire island. It is very easy for a great swordsman to cut his island, but if he wants to chop it into pieces, then he is no ordinary great swordsman. And looking at Sorata's posture of standing freely in the air, it is not difficult to guess that Sorata may also be a demon fruit power with the ability to float. This is too in line with his appetite for flying pirates. He is the man who claims to rule the sea from the air. Chapter 41. Isn't it good to become a legend? Your pirate group? Sorata looked at the ships below that gradually moved away from this sea area and heaved a sigh of relief. Whether he came to train hockey in order to collide with the strong, or the Golden Lion came to him for something, he knew that he and the Golden Lion would definitely clash and fight. This kind of battle is not something the villagers on the small island below can resist. For ordinary people, the battle of the strong is almost like a natural disaster. Especially for a strong man like Golden Lion who has the ability to destroy heaven and earth, it is even more important to hide as far away as possible. I have to say that Big Beard is really a good marine, not only able to kneel down to the pirates for the sake of the residents of the island. It also freed Sorata from the shackles on him, so that he would not have to be timid to fight the Golden Lion. Sorata looked up at the second strongest person he met in the world of One Piece, and it can be said that he was the first strongest person. Because he didn't know how strong the dragon was. Thoughts raced through his mind. Is this guy Golden Lion in his 70s or 80s? Judging by the state, it is definitely impossible to be at the peak, and the physical fitness must not be as good as him. He remembered the old guy. Because of his age and the rudder on his head, he probably wouldn't be able to use the Conqueror's hockey now. The amount of armed color should not be too much due to physical reasons. And my strength. We can win now. He still admired the other party for giving him time to recover his strength. Don't look at it as just 1,000 cuts, you must know that this 1,000 cuts are issued in an instant. Even with his physical strength, he had to slow down for a while before he could recover. This is not a one knife chop, not to mention 1,000 knives, even 10,000 he can do it. The peak physical strength, plus the villagers below have withdrawn, and this old guy is definitely unable to beat him now. He also relaxed, and his expression has returned to his usual indifference. Often the unknown is the root of fear, and in this world he is not afraid of all known things. He stared at Golden Lion and said relaxedly, "Hey, old man, do you still have the pirates now?" He remembered that this guy's pirate group was re-established 2 years later. Gia ha 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 ha. Golden Lion laughed loudly, opened his hands, and invited Sorata again. He really appreciates Sorata, just don't get along well with him. From your eyes, I can feel that you know who I am. Now that you know who I am, you should know my strength. As long as you can join, my pirate group can be re-established now. After a pause, he laughed again. Gia ha 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 ha, silver-haired Sorata, be my right arm. With my plan and your potential, I can now make the world government feel the pain. Let them know that the Golden Lion is back. Gia ha 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 ha. Sorata stared at the Golden Lion who was laughing wildly, and could feel his crazy ambition from his expression and words. Advertisement: this guy just wants to destroy the world now, and he is completely bewildered. When he no longer believes in his own strength, and engages in those upgraded monsters, in fact, this guy is no longer the top powerhouse in the world. He is now in a state where his strength and ambition are obviously not commensurate. In fact, with his ability, there is no need to engage in any kind of beasts, dozens of islands, just run away after losing it, and it is not a matter of minutes to destroy East Blue. Not to mention East Blue, even all branches of Marine have been wiped out by him. Okay, there may also be secrets that he doesn't know about. Belch. Sorata tore off the wine gourd from his waist, held it up to his mouth, raised his head, took a sip, and hiccuped. Cool, I have to say that the 300,000 wine is still something. The corner of Sorata's mouth hooked, and Sorata smiled at Golden Lion. Old man, when you get older, you should find a place where the birds are singing and the flowers are fragrant. I have to come out and show off everywhere, wouldn't it be good to become a legend? After a pause, he took a sip of wine. He continued to sneer. At such an age, you come out to preach about destroying the world, don't you know it's funny? Destroy the world, make the world feel pain or something, you think you are pain. Listening to Sorata's voice, Golden Lion slowly stopped laughing. He looked at Sorata, frowned lightly, took a deep breath of the cigarette, reached out to take the cigar from his mouth, shook the ash in front of him, his body bursting with anger. So, this is your answer. Then an astonishing aura slowly emanated from Golden Lion's body. This isn't Conqueror's hockey, this is the air of a strong man who has always been at the top. Looking at Sorata, who was still calm and didn't take him seriously at all, a fierce light flashed in Golden Lion's eyes, and he grinned grimly. Gia ha 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 ha, since this is your answer, then go to hell. He was the Golden Lion, and even Roger couldn't help but take him seriously. Since his debut, no one has dared to look at him like that. You little brat, do you really think I'm too old to lift a knife? This will let you experience the horror of the real big pirate. As he spoke, he threw his feet back and kicked Sorata in the direction of Sorata with the 2 famous knives tied to his legs. Immediately, 2 huge crescent-shaped golden slashes flew towards Sorata quickly. Slash wave. Sorata unhurriedly drew out Zonkong, holding the handle of the knife with both hands, facing the Golden Lion's slashing blows. The speed was 2 cuts. 2 equally huge silver-gray slashes quickly moved towards the golden slash. Clank. The collision of the 2 slashes made a loud sound like the impact of metal, and after a stalemate for a while, The two slashes passed by, the golden one flew to the sea, and the silver one flew to the sky. Everyone on the fleet that was sailing fast in the direction of Rog Town raised their heads in unison when they heard the voice in the sky. Just in time, I saw the sky that seemed to be split apart by the silver slash. Through the cut clouds, they could clearly see the outline of the huge island above. Everyone on board broke out in a cold sweat. There are really other islands on it. Advertisement at this moment, they only felt a golden light flash before their eyes. Then they saw a bottomless crack suddenly burst open in the sea not far from their fleet. Then the sea water poured fiercely into the crack. And their boat was pulled by the cracked water and gradually changed direction. The people on the boat quickly changed the direction of the sail, and with the help of the wind, they quickly escaped from the cracked sea current. Looking at the abyss like crack on the sea behind him, the cracked sky, and the island of Proxius that was cut open by another golden strike. They couldn't help but feel fortunate that the two guys didn't start fighting at the beginning. If they still stay on Prussia Island now, how many people will die? Thinking of this, they couldn't help casting grateful glances towards the marine military aircraft ahead. At first they had complained about the bearded colonel, thinking he was making a fuss out of a molehill. If it weren't for the high prestige of Big Beard and his father in Prussia Island, they might not have followed Big Beard to evacuate. If you don't evacuate. Thinking of this, they all shuddered and felt even more grateful for the bearded colonel. The stern of the Liberty. What an exaggeration. These two guys are like myths. Adao held a cigarette in his hand, trembling, looked at the sky, and let out a sigh. Yeah. This is too powerful. Open the sky, crack the sea, and the floating islands. Uruo also sighed at this moment. Is this the strength of the legendary pirate? If the legendary pirates have this strength, then we'd better lie down. Boom. At this moment, Awa punched Aluo on the head. You are the last guy, of course you have to lie down. After all, your strength is just that. How, do you guys want to fight again? I will accompany you anytime. Arlo reached out to touch the pistol at his waist. Hit it, I'm afraid of you. As they said that, the two guys put their heads together and glared at each other. Boom. Just then, Kuina stepped up and knocked them to the ground with two punches. Adao stood beside her and shrugged her mouth at Awa who had two big bumps on her head. It's really retarded. I don't even look at what time it is, but I dared to quarrel. Kuina looked at the cracks in the sea and in the air, with excitement in his eyes. She is not too worried about Sorata, even if the opponent is a legendary pirate, she still believes that Sorata will definitely win. If the peak duel of the great swordsman hadn't been too dangerous on Prussia Island, fearing that it would affect Sorata, she would have wanted to stay on Prussia Island to watch the battle. She tightened the knife at her waist, her eyes determined. One day, she will definitely be able to perform such a slash. Chapter 42. Who do you think Lousy is? Air. Golden Lion found that Sorata couldn't do anything with the slash, so he put his feet together and rose slightly. The famous knife on the foot, with the tip of the knife in one place, quickly stabbed towards Sorata. Red light flashed in Sorata's eyes, and he held the knife with both hands and slashed towards the tip of the knife that was coming rapidly. Clang, a huge wave of air rushed from the middle of the battle to all directions. The speed is not slow, but unfortunately the use of hockey is too low. Golden Lion stared at Sorata and laughed arrogantly. Gia ha 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 ha, kid, are you on this level? Sorata felt where the knife collided, and his hockey was collapsing rapidly, so he had to increase the output of hockey to maintain the protection of hockey, otherwise Zon Kong would be easily damaged. Old man, it's just the beginning. Why are you so anxious to see how far I can go? I'm afraid you won't be able to bear it. He stared at the Golden Lion with an arrogance on his face. In terms of arrogance and arrogance, no one in this world could compare to him. He didn't show it before, because no one could make him show his arrogance and arrogance. With both hands, he slightly pushed away the tip of the Golden Lion's knife, and then quickly slashed towards the Golden Lion's chest along the tip of the knife. Zan Kong blade across the Golden Lion's famous sword, Sakura 10, and Mukuru, flashed a burst of sparks. How could the Golden Lion have so much combat experience that Sorata could have been killed? In the past 20 years, he has used his feet to swing the knife, which is as flexible as his hands. He kicked away the knife that Sorata had cut with one knife, and stabbed directly at Sorata's head without changing the direction of the other knife. Sorata hurriedly dodged the knife sideways, then quickly approached Golden Lion, flipped the knife in his hand, and slashed at his stumped leg forcefully. Golden Lion laughed. The kid wants to kill me, but you are still far away. Gia ha 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 ha. He quickly floated back, with his swords crossed in front of him, and easily blocked Sorata's knife. Clang, Golden Lion stared at the place where the knife collided and laughed loudly. Gia ha 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 ha. You are such a low-level hockey, how dare you fight me? If that's all you have, I'm going to be disappointed. As he spoke, he quickly kicked Sorata. Sorata blocked the Golden Lion's slash as soon as he turned around. Clang, the knives collided with each other, then separated quickly, and then collided again at an even faster speed. Clank. Clang. Clang. Sparks flashed where the two met, Golden Lion floated in the air, his feet flailing in afterimages, and Sorata's hands were barely visible. Waves of air continuously rushed towards the surroundings from between the two of them fighting. These air waves formed a hurricane, which easily washed away the thick clouds above, exposing a dozen floating sky islands suspended in it. Advertisement in the fights again and again, Sorata clearly felt Haki's solidification, and he was not in a hurry, so he used the Golden Lion to condense Haki. Gradually, Golden Lion felt something was wrong. This silver-haired brat is trying to train Haki through him. He slammed Sorata away with a single blow, and floated backwards with this force. Little ghost, I have to say that your aptitude is one of the best among all the people I know. As he spoke, he raised his toes and slashed a huge slash towards Sorata. Sorata stood in place, and when the slash was about to approach, he turned to the side and easily dodged the slash. Then he kicked the air with his feet and quickly approached the Golden Lion. He didn't want to slash the flying slash with the other party. That's of no use at all. Golden Lion looked at Sorata, who was approaching him with a grinning face, swung his feet quickly, and saw several golden crescent-shaped slashes flying towards Sorata. Lion. Thousand Slice Valley, little ghost, don't forget that I'm still a great swordsman with 2 swords. His slash is dozens of times more powerful than ordinary slashes. Sorata's eyes were filled with starlight, staring at the sky full of golden slashing strikes. He stopped at the same place, first retracted Zonkong, and then a coercive aura rose from him. Conqueror's Haki. Golden Lion stared at the charged Sorata in surprise. He was too familiar with this breath, because when his head was not plugged in by the rudder, he emitted this kind of Haki all the time. It's just that he is old now, and the rudder has too much influence on his spirit, so he can't break out Conqueror's Haki anymore. Sorata held Zonkong with his right hand, leaned forward, and bent his left leg. A lavender-black Haki wrapped around Zonkong along his arm. The lavender-black Haki, thinking like a tentacle, spread to the surroundings, but was crushed by Sorata's will into Zonkongdao's slash. Sorata was fully fired, and purple lightning even appeared around her. He raised his head and stared at the golden slash all over the sky. Immediately out of the knife. God slash. I saw a huge lavender-black slash, quickly slashing towards countless golden slashes. Clang, the sound resounded throughout the world. Then there is a strong light that pierces the entire sky and shoots to all visible places. After the strong light passed, the lavender-black slash immediately cut off the golden slash, and slashed towards the Golden Lion with undiminished power. Looking at this huge lavender-black slash, Golden Lion couldn't help but think of his old enemy Roger. The same slash, in fact, he used often in the past. This is Conqueror's Winding, that can only be achieved by applying Conqueror's to Ultimate. Advertisement. He didn't know how this Brad did it, but there was no doubt that Sorata could already be called the top powerhouse in this sea. As far as he knew, only Roger, Whitebeard, and himself could do it. As for Charlotte Linlin and Kaido, these 2 guys definitely couldn't do it 20 years ago. He shook his head and stared at Sorata arrogantly. The boy is really amazing, he can make such a slash. But do you think you can beat me like this? Then he laughed and said, Jia ha 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 ha, who do you think Lousy is? Lousy is Golden Lion Shiki. He will not retreat, and it is impossible to retreat. Facing the oncoming slash, he tore off the double knives on his feet and changed them to hold double knives in his hands. Little devil, today I will let you see the real-world peak slash. Then he swung his hands quickly, slashing 2 huge golden slashes towards the lavender-black slash. Slash wave. Obviously, with a knife in both hands, his strength has improved to a higher level. Clang, lilac-black slash and golden slash were in a stalemate for a while, and then they both rushed into the sky. With a bang, it easily cut a small island above in half, and disappeared into the sky without diminishing its power. The cut island tilted to both sides, and countless huge beasts fell from it. Sorata ignored the fierce beast above, and rushed towards the Golden Lion quickly. Clang, seeing Sorata approaching, Golden Lion just raised his hand slightly and caught the fierce knife. He looked at Sorata, who was close in front of him, with a ferocious face and a fierce look in his eyes. Little devil, from now on let you feel the real gap between you and me. Sorata stared at Golden Lion and pursed her lips, and sneered, Old man, I can fight like this for a few days with my physical strength. As for you, how long can you fight? The veins popped out on Golden Lion's forehead. Don't be so arrogant, Brad, who do you think Lousy is? He pushed Sorata away with a hard blow, and flew backwards, just in front of the fallen island. Controlling the 2 famous knives to fly back to his lap, he looked down at Sorata. He raised his right hand backwards, controlled the island behind him, and slammed down on Sorata forcefully. Let you experience my ability to dominate the sea today. Lion Majesty. Earth coiling. The island behind him, which was cut in half, instantly turned into 2 huge lion heads, roaring towards Sorata. Following the Golden Lion's gesture, he rushed towards Sorata rapidly. Sorata cut the lion's head easily with 2 slashes. Okay, he just wanted to continue rushing towards the Golden Lion. But the lion's head closed instantly, as if nothing had happened, and continued to charge towards him. Chapter 43. Who is the prey? Looking at the lion head rushing. Sorata really had nothing to do. This kind of slashing was useless, and he didn't know how to punch or kick. I don't know how Wang Luffy beat such a golden lion. The color of knowledge and the color of armament are not weak. Although the quantity is a little less, the quality is high. Just like this is not something Luffy can fight, especially when this guy changed to holding a knife, he would be the top swordsman in the sea. He shook his head, and said calmly to Golden Lion, I originally wanted to fight you with swordsmanship. Since you want to die so much, then I will give it to you. Golden Lion listened, with a mocking look in his eyes. Could it be that you still have some heaven-defying fruit ability? A flash of madness flashed in Sorata's eyes. He had already decided that he would not kill this guy until he squeezed out the last remaining value of this guy. It is very rare to meet a person on the sea who allows him to fight to his heart's content. Sorata clasped his hands together and broke out. A bag of rice has to be carried up to several floors. A bag of rice has to be carried up to the second floor. Pseudo Shenluo Tianzheng. Boom! I saw two lion heads facing Sorata in the middle and bumping into each other fiercely. Under the control of Golden Lion, it was wrapped into a ball, and Sorata was sealed inside. He was staring at the ball, feeling the power gathering inside it, and he didn't talk nonsense. His right hand swung down fiercely. The ball suddenly accelerated and smashed towards the sea below. It doesn't matter what your ability is, go struggle in the sea. At this moment, the high-speed falling ball suddenly stopped in the air, then expanded rapidly, and exploded from it with a bang. Among the rubble that filled the sky, Sorata was standing intact. It's useless to say it all. The Golden Lion was full of arrogance, and stared at Sorata with a big smile. Gee ha 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 ha. Kid, your ability is useless. As he spoke, his eyes showed a fierce look, and he shook his right hand fiercely. The broken rocks that were flying towards the surroundings suddenly stopped in the air, and then shot towards Sorata in the middle at an even faster speed. Sorata looked at the stones that surrounded him again, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Exclamation again. Advertisement, how did Luffy fight this thing? He opened the field, only to see that the stones shot into his field quickly became smaller. In the end, the surroundings of Sorata were like a black hole, sucking all the rubble into the space domain. Then it reorganized into a ball in his field, suspended beside him. It's not that it's getting smaller, it's that the space has been enlarged, and the ball is still as big as before, but it looks like it's getting smaller from the outside. Golden Lion was a little surprised now. As soon as the stone entered Sorata's domain, he felt out of control, and now it was so small. He stared at Sorata and suddenly burst out laughing. Gee ha 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 ha. Interesting, really interesting. A monster like you appeared on the sea. Gee ha 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 ha. Sorata didn't care why Golden Lion suddenly laughed out of nowhere. His figure suddenly disappeared in place, teleported to the sky above the Golden Lion. His right hand was like playing a steel ball, and bounced the ball towards the Golden Lion below. The ball looked very slow at first, and then the speed became faster and faster, dragging out a fiery red exhaust in his domain, and as the ball continued to fall, its volume was also rapidly expanding. Old guy, try mine, 10 million times the meteorite bomb. The Golden Lion sensed it the moment Sorata teleported above his head. So fast? No, it's not speed, it's teleportation. He stared at Sorata, shocked for the first time. Although for the top powerhouses, speed is no longer the way to win. The subtlety lies in the reaction speed of the nerves. Because the top powerhouses are very knowledgeable, they can basically predict the enemy's opportunities first, and in the end it depends on who reacts quickly. Of course, that's all under the condition that the speed is not too different. If it is too fast, no matter how fast your nerve reaction is, it is impossible to really teleport as fast. He raised his toes, and two huge slashes flew towards Sorata. It collided with the ball that had just rushed out of the field and had turned back to the size of an island. Puff, the ball was instantly cut into 4 pieces like a watermelon, and it quickly fell towards the sea. Rumble. The stone hit the sea like a meteorite, setting off huge waves and rushing wantonly into the distance. In an instant the whole island of Prussia was submerged. Sorata glanced at the fleet in the sky, and looked at the distance. It should be fine, so she looked away. The fleet is far away now, and the people on board can no longer see Sorata and Golden Lion in the sky. Only the sound of blade clashing from the horizon clearly told them the intensity of the battle. At this moment, there was a sudden earth-shattering roar from behind. Advertisement. Everyone quickly looked to the back, only to see a huge wave in the sky, like a white city wall, rushing towards them quickly. This made them wish they could grow their wings and fly away from this terrifying sea. Quick, go faster. The villagers on the boat hurriedly shouted loudly. Although the distance was already far away, they did not feel a sense of security. It's terrible, these two guys are not human at all. In their effective cognition, even if they are gods, there is only this level. Sorata stared at Golden Lion, and appeared behind him in an instant, raising his hand with a knife. He has to fight Golden Lion in melee today, because it can quickly condense his haki. Clang, red light flashed in Golden Lion's eyes, and he raised his foot to block Sorata's blade. And Sorata didn't give Golden Lion time to distance himself. He swung Zonkong quickly at Golden Lion. Bang 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 bang. You guy, do you really use me as a whetstone? The Golden Lion stared at Sorata angrily. With a thought, he saw the floating island above. Except for the largest island in the middle, all others flew towards this side. Rumble. These flying islands collided fiercely below them, forming a huge island. Golden Lion fought and retreated, leading Sorata to land on the island. He can't use the fruit's ability very well in the air. He folded his free hands together towards the middle. Lion Majesty. Earth coiling. I saw the ground rolling, and countless lion heads crashed towards Sorata. And Golden Lion kicked hard with both feet, chopping Sorata away. He himself took advantage of this counterforce to retreat a certain distance to the rear. Then he danced his feet, Lion, Thousand Slice Valley. Countless slashes headed towards Sorata. Sorata looked up and glanced around. A violent breath erupted from her body. He turned his head and stared at the golden lion arrogantly, as if staring at prey, and roared loudly. Old guy, it's useless to talk about it. Chapter 44. Arrogant, simply too arrogant. Then he put his hands together and saw the space around him collapse instantly, and then a huge force rushed towards the surroundings. Pseudo Shenluo Tianzheng. The lion heads and slashes rushing from all around were instantly dispersed. Sorata stepped through the dust all over the sky, and with a knife in his hand, he quickly approached the golden lion. Shave, step forward and chop. With a sound of whoosh, he instantly appeared on top of Golden Lion's head and slashed down fiercely. Clang, sensing that Hockey didn't collapse at the blade collision, Sorata laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha, old guy, you'd better train obediently with me. Ha 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 ha, he kept swinging his knife and hitting hard, and Golden Lion was now passively defending. What's the matter, old guy, can't it work now? He roared furiously. If you only have this kind of strength, then go to hell. Then the veins on the arm holding the knife burst out, and he slashed at the Golden Lion. Clang, a golden figure quickly shot towards the rear. Golden Lion wanted to stabilize his body, but the strength from his arm made him unable to stop no matter what. He followed his plan and shot towards his main island at a faster speed. Sorata looked at the Golden Lion flying far away, a trace of doubt flashed across his face. Does this old guy want to run away? It shouldn't be. It is impossible for such a strong man to have the idea of running away from his junior. He shook his head, didn't think anymore, stared at Golden Lion, and activated the ability. Teleport. It appeared behind Golden Lion in an instant, and it was a knife to his back. Clang, there was a red light in Golden Lion's eyes, and he took the first step to block Sorata's blow. Although he can't keep up with Sorata in terms of speed, his observation Hockey is the top. Although he is not yet able to foresee the future, this kind of top-notch knowledge, the speed of nerve response endowed to him, and his decades of combat experience are not something ordinary people can possess. With this force, he flew towards the air at a faster speed, and flew towards the edge of the main island, and finally stood beside the seawater layer outside the main island. Oh, it turned out that they wanted to use the power of seawater to deal with me. Sorata stood where she was, staring at Golden Lion with great interest, pulled off the wine gourd from her waist, and drank the wine leisurely. Old guy, if you have any tricks, use them as soon as possible. Then it's all right. Practice Hockey with me, advertisement. Belch. He breathed out a breath of alcohol at Golden Lion, and a blush flashed across his face. Looking at the wine gourd in his hand, he shook it. Not enough to drink. Gia ha 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 ha, kid, don't be too arrogant, do you really think you can win against me? Golden Lion laughed loudly, and then quickly kicked a slash towards the edge of the main island. Slash wave. I saw the seawater layer on the edge of the main island, like a jelly, with a pop sound, and a piece was cut off in an instant. Then he opened his 5 fingers, and saw that the cut seawater, like fireworks, disintegrated into countless small water droplets and spread out towards the surroundings instantly. The whole world is wrapped in thick seawater raindrops. Then his hand shook. I saw the water droplets all over the sky, instantly decomposed again, and decomposed into water mist all over the sky. The water mist covers the whole sky, making people feel like being in the fog in the morning in winter. This was specially prepared by him to prevent Sorata from teleporting. In the sea mist, he didn't believe that Sorata could teleport away. He stares at Sorata, haughtily. Gia ha 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 ha, kid, keep going. This is a gift I specially prepared for you, a capable person. As he spoke, he shook his right hand. I saw the mist scattered around, as if being pulled by something, quickly gathered towards Sorata in the middle. Sorata looked at Golden Lion like he was looking at a fool. This guy has been preparing for so long, is this all? These things are not necessary to him at all, because he didn't intend to move at all. Since the old guy likes acting so much, let him perform a unique skill for him too. After all, the old man is about to go into the ground, and he is not good. It deprives him of his last happy time, isn't it? As the mist gathered rapidly, it quickly condensed into water droplets on the surface of his body. At this moment, a frightened expression appeared on Sorata's face in real time. Then his whole body was instantly submerged in the seawater formed by the connection of water droplets. He grabbed his throat, couldn't help holding his breath, and kept spitting out small bubbles from his mouth. A very uncomfortable look. Gia ha 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 ha. Golden Lion looked at Sorata, who had been trapped in the seawater by him, and he couldn't help laughing, which kept coming out of his mouth. The depressed air of being suppressed and beaten by Sorata before was swept away. He just looked at Sorata quietly, laughing non-stop. Okay. Sorata has been waiting for the Golden Lion's slash, weighing left and right, but the slash never came. Advertisement. He couldn't help but glanced at the Golden Lion. The old guy was indifferent and kept laughing. Old guy, you can't stop laughing, you haven't come to a slash to end his performance. At this moment, he really wanted to complain to Golden Lion. His embarrassing performance is very hard, okay? This guy is not like this to Wong Luffy. Why did my brain suddenly work when I came to him? Thinking of this, he gave up acting and kept showing various game poses in the water. Breaststroke, freestyle, backstroke, butterfly, even the dog's plan, the turtle's lazy swim. Everything you need. Golden Lion looked at Sorata, who kept changing his posture in the water, How could he not know that he was played by Sorata just now? His series of useless performances just now, maybe in the eyes of this guy, he is a fool. Because this guy doesn't seem to be afraid of seawater at all. This ability is too invincible. In his decades of life, all he knows is that there are only a limited number of people with fruit abilities who are not so afraid of seawater. Just like him, he can easily control the seawater, thus ignoring the curse of the sea. But if you let him be completely submerged in seawater like Sorata, it is simply impossible. However, what he didn't know was that Sorata wasn't a capable person at all. Golden Lion stared at Sorata with veins popping out of his forehead. Too arrogant, simply too arrogant, this guy just doesn't care about his Golden Lion at all. Thinking, he swung his legs quickly at Sorata. Go to hell, brat. Lion. Thousand Slice Valley. Several golden slashes quickly rushed towards Sorata wrapped in seawater. Okay. Sorata stopped her movements, turned her head to look at the angry Golden Lion, her eyes fixed. If you know there is a gap between you and me, then practice duel with me obediently. He didn't even look at the oncoming golden slash, and the space field unfolded instantly. Boom, a huge force instantly shook the seawater and the slash away. Then Sorata teleported directly behind Golden Lion, drew Zon Kong, and slashed hard at his back. Clang, Golden Lion was quite helpless with Sorata's teleportation, so he could only raise his knife backwards to block the blow. Then his body quickly shot towards the ground. With a bang, it crashed into a giant mountain below. Chapter 45 Ding. Your Golden Lion teacher is online. Outside of the mountain, Sorata waited for a while, but didn't see the Golden Lion coming out. He couldn't help shouting to the mountain. Hey, old guy, you won't be a turtle. I can feel the breath of the old guy, and it hasn't weakened in any way. Just a little out of breath. Could it be that he is really too old to fight with this young man for a while? At this moment, suddenly a momentum much stronger than Sorata's Conqueror's Haki rose from the giant mountain in front. What? Feeling this momentum, Sorata frowned. How can the old guy still burst into Conqueror's Haki? Suddenly the huge mountain split open from the middle, and a huge crescent-shaped golden slash rushed out of it, slashing towards Sorata fiercely. Sorata hastily slashed out the same slash, clang. The two slashes were entangled with each other, quickly rushed towards the air, and disappeared. Golden Lion danced wildly with blonde hair, and slowly rose into the sky from the crack of the giant mountain. With his appearance, a more powerful conqueror swept across the world in an instant. Everyone on the only giant island above them, except Indigo, all had white eyes and were stunned. Sorata, who bears the brunt, feels even more strongly. Is this the top of the world? It's really scary? He tops Golden Lion's Haki and bursts out of his Conqueror's Haki. Click. The sound of space shattering came from where the two strands of Haki collided. Purple lightning shot out all around. Under the mental pressure, Sorata looked up at the Golden Lion floating in the air, his pupils shrank suddenly. The old guy seemed to be really trying to fight him, and he tore the rudder of the boat. No wonder the Conqueror's Haki burst out, it seems to be a flashback. Golden Lion was floating in the air, smoking a cigarette leisurely. After tearing off the rudder, his spirit suddenly improved a lot. He casually tore off a piece of clothing from his body, and bandaged the wound on his head indiscriminately so as not to let him bleed to death so quickly. In his current state, he is no longer violent and arrogant as before, but has become very gentle. At least from the perspective of breath, it has become milder. Are you stupid? Sorata stared at Golden Lion, a look of doubt flashed across his face. The gentle Golden Lion, but it has never appeared before. Golden Lion stared at Sorata below, like staring at a piece of peerless jade, and the appreciation in his eyes became stronger. Advertisement: this guy only appreciates the strong. In being suppressed by Sorata, he already knew that his day should be the end. Now that it's the end, there's no hesitation, of course we have to fight with all our strength. Even knowing that the rudder was torn off, his life began to count down. But you can't let this silver-haired kid be underestimated, can you? Who is he? He is the Golden Lion. He stared at Sorata, showing his signature laugh, but this time the laugh was less hostile than before. Gia ha 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 ha, Brad, I approve of you. I, Golden Lion Shiki, would like to call you a strong man. Sorata stared at Golden Lion, confused for a moment. Is this old guy completely crazy for tearing off the rudder? He put his right hand on the hilt of the knife, making a gesture of drawing the knife at any time, staring at the Golden Lion and shouting loudly. Old guy, are you crazy or what? If you don't come, I will come. Gia ha 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 ha. Come on, Brad, let me truly appreciate what the top combat power of the sea is. He held the saber in both hands, and slashed at Sorata casually with his right hand. Slash wave. I saw a crescent-shaped giant slash with a more intense golden color, flying towards Sorata at high speed. Sorata kicked her feet hard on the ground with a whoosh, quickly faced the golden slash, drew her sword and slashed away. Shave, draw the knife and chop. Boom, his blade and the golden slash collided fiercely. Then he was pushed backwards by the slash, and didn't stop until tens of meters away. As soon as he exerted his arm, he stared at the slash and changed direction, flying upwards. Sorata looked up at the Golden Lion in surprise, so strong. It is not comparable to before. Golden Lion's previous slash was strong, but his is not weak either. He felt that if he hadn't received it directly with a knife, but with a flying slash just now, Then his slash will be shattered in an instant. The power of the two is completely different. Sensing Sorata's surprise in the face of its first appearance, Golden Lion smiled heroically. Gia ha 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 ha, little devil, don't you want me to die? Come soon. After such a long time, he had already discovered that this brat was fighting him with his beast-like body and incomparable observation haki. But these factors are of no use to a strong swordsman like him. Also, this brat has extremely little combat experience. Although Sorata is growing rapidly in the battle with him, but after all, he has just set out to sea, and facing him now, it is not enough. Advertisement. Sorata stared at the Golden Lion, sheathed the knife, and quickly drew it. Jihei, draw your sword and chop. I saw a huge silver-gray slash flying towards the Golden Lion. Although he knew that Golden Lion's slash was not comparable to before, but he still wanted to try the gap. Golden Lion laughed, and smashed Sorata's slash with a single blow. The slash is too scattered and not solid enough. He paused, and then continued, it should be more ingenious, instead of just using brute force. This kind of slash is too simple. When you meet a strong one, it will be like your haki. It will break when you touch it, you should be effective. Control your breath, then compress the slash, and finally slash the flying slash. As he spoke, he swung his knife at Sorata, slash wave. A half-moon-shaped golden slash flew over from Golden Lion's hand. Sorata hastily used the method Golden Lion just taught, and slashed an equally huge half-moon-shaped silver-gray slash. His slash this time was actually stalemate with Golden Lion's slash for a while before being cut off by Golden Lion's slash. Looking at Zon Kong in his hand, Sorata already knew the status of Golden Lion. From the moment he took off the rudder, this guy knew he was going to die. Then the old guy's brain circuit didn't know what was going on, and he had some whimsical ideas. I want to keep his things in this world as much as possible. It is also possible that because of Sorata's potential and identity as a pirate, he wanted to cultivate a more powerful pirate for the world after his death. So the old guy taught Sorata his strongest slash. The power of this old guy's slash wave, in its heyday, was enough to cut hundreds of kilometers of sea. How powerful that is. In the past, Sorata definitely couldn't cut such a long distance. And these top-level swordsman's slashes cannot be learned in the Yixin dojo. Only by constantly fighting with top-level powerhouses can one find out one's own slashes. Just like what the old guy said, his slash was actually done by him with brute force with his monster-like body. Scattered, no technical content. Of course, it is very powerful to meet miscellaneous fish, but when he meets a real strong man, his slash is useless at all. With such a slash, he couldn't even cut through other people's armed defenses. Now that he knew the old guy's plan, Sorata didn't say anything. He appeared next to the old guy in an instant, and cut with a knife. Golden Lion laughed loudly. Little devil, the speed is very fast, but your reaction is too slow. There was a red light in his eyes, and he cut Sorata with a knife first. Then he turned the blade slightly, and slashed on the back of Sorata's blade with an extremely tricky cut. Jean's Sorata froze for a moment. The battle of the strong can actually end in this instant. However, Golden Lion did not take the opportunity to attack again, but stared at Sorata and said loudly, Little devil, the color of knowledge is not as far away as possible. You must learn to grasp the subtleties, and when you master all the colors of knowledge inch by inch, and achieve the knife follow your heart, so that you can truly be called strong. Sorata stood not far away staring at the Golden Lion. He said fiercely, Old guy, you are addicted to being a teacher. Chapter 46. Ding. Your Golden Lion teacher is offline forever. Gia ha 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 ha. Golden Lion laughed loudly, then suddenly stopped, and said to Sorata with a smirk all over his face, Little devil, we have to fight seriously next time. If you don't blame me if you die. As he spoke, he suddenly rushed towards Sorata quickly. Red light flashed in Sorata's eyes, narrowing the scope of knowledge and knowledge, trying to control it within the battle circle. Sure enough, it was completely different from the completely dispersed state. He could feel that he was more comfortable when swinging the knife. These advanced applications of haki are not guided by top experts, but they are actually very difficult to find. The color of knowledge and knowledge is a state of natural emission, which is difficult to control, and ordinary people can only achieve emission and recycling. No one could have imagined that this thing can be controlled in a subtle way. Clang, Sorata blocked the knife, quickly retracted the knife, and then Golden Lion quickly slashed over with the second knife. Bang 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 bang. Now the situation is reversed, and he is passively defending. But he could feel that the old guy was deliberately guiding his sword skills and refining his haki. He glanced at Golden Lion with complicated eyes. Sensing Sorata's gaze, Golden Lion laughed loudly, Gia ha 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 ha. You kid are not sympathizing with me. Then he suddenly burst into a violent momentum. Who do you think I am? Laozi is the captain of the Flying Pirates, admiral of the Golden Lion pirate fleet, Flying Pirates, Golden Lion, Shiki. Facing the suddenly violent Golden Lion, Sorata tried to defend as much as possible. On the small island, the sound of clashing swords can be heard endlessly. From time to time, a slash flew out to cut through the clouds in the sky. The battle lasted for a day and 2 nights. When the sun rose on the 3rd day, the sound of collisions on the island gradually disappeared. I saw that the small island with high mountains was basically moved to the ground now. In the center of the island, in a huge, sinking pit, Golden Lion and Sorata were both panting and looking at each other. Unlike Sorata's aura, which is fairly steady, Golden Lion's aura is a bit intermittent now. He is so tired. Advertisement: the fire of his life is about to be extinguished. To be able to fight with Sorata until now, it is his amazing perseverance that supports him. Sorata looked at Golden Lion, complex emotions flashed in his eyes, and he had to admit that this old guy really became his master in the end. Even if you don't have the name of master and apprentice, you already have the reality of master and apprentice. I don't know what happened to these top powerhouses in the sea. I like to be someone else's teacher. He's not King Luffy either. Could it be that the Golden Lion saw the identity of his protagonist? Gia ha 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 ha. A sudden loud laugh interrupted Sorata's thoughts. Staring at the laughing Golden Lion, he laughed too. The master is the master. The other party dares to teach everything, so why doesn't he dare to learn? Golden Lion stared at Sorata with satisfaction. He was still very satisfied with the student he met on his deathbed. In this short period of 1 day and 2 nights, Sorata basically learned his sword skills and hockey's skills. He stopped laughing, stared at Sorata and smiled. Boy, one last trick for you. Your use of conquerors is too rough. I don't know how you can do conquerors winding. But there is still a gap between your entanglement and the real conqueror's entanglement. Then a powerful conqueror's hockey erupted from him, and he dropped the knife in his left hand and held it in both hands. I saw a thick purple-black hockey rushing out of his body, spreading towards the surroundings. Around his body, countless red-purple lightnings appeared out of thin air. With veins popping out of Golden Lion's forehead, he used all his strength to wrap this strand of hockey around the knife. For him now, this last blow was a bit reluctant. Sorata looked at Golden Lion quietly and didn't bother. His conqueror's entanglement was forcibly entangled on the knife by using the space domain and his omnipotent mental power in the domain. In this way, it is indeed stronger than the arm color, but it is also limited, and it cannot be the key blow that determines the outcome. The Golden Lion looked up at Sorata and continued. Conqueror's hockey, to put it bluntly, is a person's courage. This cannot be grown by cultivation. It can only be grown and controlled by colliding with the real strong with top conquerors through conquerors. When you have full control over your conqueror's hockey, the same way you control the armament hockey, then you can do things like entanglement naturally. Advertisement. As he said that, he slashed at Sorata vigorously, cutting out the last knife in his life. I saw a huge crescent-shaped purple-black slash, which instantly crossed the distance between them, as if it really cut through the space, causing a large number of cracks like spider webs to appear around the slash. Cracks even spread across the entire island. Little ghost, if you really can't take it, then you and Lousy will die together. Because the sea doesn't need the weak. Gia ha 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 ha. Sorata stood on the spot, staring solemnly at the huge oncoming slash. His silver hair kept flying back, his eyes flashed rapidly, and he wanted to draw his sword several times to meet him, but finally gave up. He could feel that it was impossible for him to use a knife to carry out Golden Lion's life-burning last strike. With the unparalleled sharpness of this slash, he felt that even the world's #1 swordsman, Hawkeye, might not be able to slash such a slash. Unless Hawkeye can also conqueror's hockey, he can also do entanglement. There was no way. He looked at the chop that was about to stick in front of him. He found helplessly that only Domain could truly receive this slash. Sorata looked up, looked at Golden Lion quietly, and shouted loudly, "Old guy, I will show you my strongest strength at last, and I will let you understand." Golden Lion stopped laughing when he heard the voice, and he tried his best to open his eyes wide to dispel the illusion in his eyes. He was actually exhausted at this time, and if it wasn't for his tenacious will to support him, he might have collapsed directly to the ground. He raised his head and saw that his slash hit Sorata with a bang, as if hitting a transparent wall. The space around Sorata shattered like a mirror. Just when he thought his slash would continue, the broken space around Sorata suddenly recovered like a broken mirror. After a stalemate for a while, his slash suddenly broke in two. The first half continued to move towards the sky, while the second half stopped in front of Sorata. As time passed, the lower half of the slash gradually shrunk rapidly, and finally disappeared directly in front of Sorata. Is it the one in front that absorbed Kojima's ability? It's really amazing. Gia ha 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 ha. He grinned and laughed out loud, as if seeing his old enemy Roger again. It's the people from East Blue again. It's the people from East Blue who stopped him from reaching the top of the world. Roger. Golden Lion gave a final roar, completely out of breath. Chapter 47. Destiny always likes to play tricks on people. At this moment, a sudden sense of weightlessness came, and the small island at Sorata's feet quickly fell into the sea. He knew that Golden Lion was completely dead. It's amazing, it can actually cut his domain. If he didn't look at the situation correctly and increase the output of the number of space layers, his space domain would have really cut through Golden Lion's final blow. Although it's okay to cut it open, but it's all boasting, so it's necessary to maintain his invincible ability, isn't it? Looking at the Golden Lion who was still standing in front of him even if he died, Sorata's eyes flashed a trace of complex and admiring emotions. Even if it is an enemy, this guy's courage has to be admired. Even if this guy is a complete villain, he is still a heroic villain that his opponent admires. I didn't care about the giant island that was falling. He drew Zonkong and cut a deep hole in the ground next to Golden Lion. The space field unfolded, enveloping the Golden Lion inside, using his ability to move him into the deep pit, and of course his two swords. The soil around the pit gradually closed. He didn't fill it up, intending to make it discoverable by marine. Otherwise, Marine can't find the golden lion. Maybe they will dig 3 feet here, and finally find the golden lion. He left clues for Marine to discover, so that Marine would not be able to dig the tomb of a dead old man. Then he stopped in the air and let the island fall. As for the original villagers on the other island, he was not too worried. The island was big enough and surrounded by a layer of seawater, so it was impossible to sink into the sea. And he didn't clean up the fierce beasts and pirates above. That's what Marine should do. He took off the wine gourd, drank the wine, and looked at the rising sun in the sky in a trance. He gained too much in this battle if he only ended his experience by finding a strong man to fight. Maybe it will take him years to realize these advanced fighting techniques in a flash of inspiration. Shaking his head, he ignored it. He looked to the horizon in the distance. It's been 2 days, and those who want to come to naval headquarters should hurry up. Do you want to stay and fight? He stroked his chin and thought about it. Forget it. Naval headquarters can come here the fastest. It should be the yellow-skinned monkey, Kizaru, among the Marine 3 admirals. Advertisement most of the time, this guy uses fruit abilities to fight against the enemy. Moreover, fighting with Marine cannot reach the point of a life and death battle. There is no way to force this guy who is always hiding to take out Hockey and cut him. Staying and fighting this guy won't do him any good, and it's tiring. Fighting him is not as comfortable as lying down and basking in the sun. Well, before Marine comes, go to the Golden Lion Palace to see if there are any treasures and devil fruit. After all, this old guy has been floating around the world for 20 years, and he must have a lot of collections. Maybe he really has devil fruit. No matter how you say, he and I also have the reality of master and apprentice. The apprentice inherits the treasure of the master. Not too much, well, not too much. Looking at the huge white waves rushing toward the sky, Sorata's eyes flashed with wonder. Marvel at the magnificence of the sea, and also marvel at such a man-made scene. Maybe only this kind of world of One Piece, which combines mighty power, can be seen. Sorata laughed loudly while drinking, looked down at the island that had gradually calmed down, and quickly flew towards the main island of Golden Lion. The early morning sun shone on him, making him seem like a god. Chic, elegant, and very arrogant, he ignored the panicked pirates on the island, but sank all the ships inside when passing by the island's port. Of course. If any pirate who doesn't know how to live or die happens to meet him, he can only consider himself unlucky. There was a red light in his eyes, and he went straight to find Indigo, the deputy of the Golden Lion, who was in the palace. This guy is now the strongest in this group of pirates, so it's best to find him. In the aisle leading to the gate exit of the palace. In a burst of puff puff puff, sound like farting. Indigo was rushing out with a group of captains of the dragon pirates. Because of running so fast, this guy's whole body was shaking, his hands were open and he was swaying left and right, which was extremely funny. Don't look at this guy's funny looks, funny moves, and even funny walking. In fact, this guy not only has a ruthless side, but also a crazy chemical doctor. Advertisement. What he is good at is making various chemical potions and using various chemical elements to fight. This guy calls this fighting style, chemical magic. In fact, it is a juggling that uses chemical elements to produce explosions, also known as acrobatic magic. When Indigo broke Conquerors at Golden Lion, he knew something was wrong. He is not only Golden Lion's deputy, but also his attending doctor. Of course, I know how bad the mental state of Golden Lion is after plugging in the rudder. If it weren't for the influence of the rudder and being old, with the pride of Golden Lion, could we study things like IQ with him? Wasn't it because after coming out of Impel Down, his strength declined sharply, and he felt that his strength and ambition did not match, so he had to make a choice. And based on his understanding of Golden Lion, when facing this junior with silver hair, even if Golden Lion can't beat him, he will definitely not run away. To be able to use Conqueror's Hockey, he must have ripped the rudder off his head. The rudder is gone, which means that the Golden Lion has reached the end of his life and will die at any moment. He never thought that the silver-haired brat could do this. Can force Golden Lion and him to waste the plan that has been planned for nearly 2 decades. He was in the infirmary at first, waiting for the Golden Lion to return. In his opinion, since Golden Lion has pulled off the rudder, no one can beat Golden Lion. He believed that the Golden Lion would be able to get rid of the silver-haired kid soon. But when he waited and waited in the infirmary, he couldn't wait for the Golden Lion to come back. His heart began to panic, and this panic is gradually accelerating as time goes by. Especially when the island started to fall, he knew that Golden Lion was not only defeated this time, but also completely dead. Now he wasn't panicking, but terrified. He hurriedly found the dragon captains in the palace, gathered together, and quickly rushed out of the palace. If that silver-haired man came here at this time, then they would be finished. He can only pray, "Don't come, don't come, don't come." But fate always likes to play tricks on people so much. Sometimes, the more you expect, things will develop as you imagined, but the reality is just the opposite. This is not. When you read it, you really read The Righteous Master. Chapter 48. The ship's doctor is in place. Seeing like a ghost, Sorata suddenly appeared at the gate of the palace, just blocking their way. He slammed on the brakes and stopped in a panic. What's wrong? The dragon pirate captains who followed behind him quickly stopped and asked loudly. After they followed Indigo's gaze and saw the appearance of Sorata standing in front of them. Their bodies trembled in unison, and then they turned their heads and ran towards the palace in a swarm. At this time, they wished they could grow 2 more legs, so that they could escape faster. That posture, how embarrassing and embarrassing it is. I originally thought that I joined the legendary pirate Golden Lion, but from now on, I can do whatever I want. But they never expected that the huge change would come so suddenly, and the legend would collapse as soon as it said it would. Let them not be mentally prepared at all. Indigo ignored the fleeing half-captains, knowing that it was useless to run far from the horrors that could kill the Golden Lion. Really? I saw 2 crossed crescent-shaped slashes, brushing against his body and rushing towards the rear. The sharpness of the slash made all the hairs on his body stand on end, and he broke out in cold sweat. Then the aisle, which was still a little noisy just now, became quiet in an instant. Hearing the muffled sound of corpses falling to the ground, Indigo's pupils contracted and he swallowed hard. At the moment when the slash came, he thought he was dead. Click, click, click. At this moment, there was a sound of slow footsteps in the empty aisle. Although the footsteps were light, to Indigo, it was like a heavy hammer, hitting his heart one by one, one by one, one by one. Indigo involuntarily lowered his head and stooped as Sorata's stroll approached. Although he knew that Sorata kept him, it must be because he was useful, so he didn't have to worry too much about sudden death. But when facing this monster that could kill the Golden Lion, the invisible mental oppression made him dare not look down, or even look at Sorata at the same level. Sorata walked up to Indigo in slippers, looked at this funny juggler who was much taller than him, with a smile on his face. In fact, he wanted to recruit this guy to be the ship's doctor on his ship. Don't look at this guy as funny, in fact, his medical skills are still very high. Still have to watch and watch. He looked at Indigo, smiled and said, "You are the Golden Lion's deputy, Dr. Indigo. Could you please take me to your infirmary and Golden Lion's treasure house? Advertisement is going to destroy the information on the various IQ potions that this guy has researched, and he won't leave such a dangerous thing to the world government. Another thing is to see if this guy has done human experiments. If it's just experimenting on animals, it's not really a big deal. If it's a human, it's different. At that time, no matter how good this guy's medical skills are, he can't keep him." Indigo stared at Sorata and showed a smile that was uglier than crying, and he knew he couldn't refuse. Don't look at Sorata's smiling face, who has something to discuss, but this is the man who just killed the Golden Lion. Okay, my lord, please follow me, and I will take you to the laboratory. In fact, his laboratory is the infirmary. Indigo quickly turned around and walked towards the palace first. With her hands in her hands, Sorata followed Indigo to a huge iron gate. Indigo took out the key of the iron door from his pocket, inserted it into a hole on the door, twisted it hard, and the iron door automatically swung to both sides and opened slowly. He stood in front of the door, turned to look at Sorata and said, "Master, the laboratory is here." Looking at the huge space in the door, Sorata ignored Indigo and walked in slowly. The first thing that catches the eye is a dozen huge culture glass tubes shining with a cool blue light. Seeing Sorata standing in front of the culture tube, Indigo quickly came up and explained, "My lord, these are all for the purpose of studying a plant called IQ, and the experimental animal remains." "Well, I know, take me to the place where you recorded the experimental data." "I didn't see any human remains, it's okay, but I still have to look at the experiment records." "This way, my lord, please." Following Indigo to his workbench, looking at the notebooks covering the wall, Sorata had to sigh that scientists are really crazy. It would be easier to let him die than to let him write so many things. He took out a record book and read it. Cannot read it. With the same expression on his face, he casually threw the book in his hands and took out another one. Still don't understand. What's the matter with these scientists, can't they write something that people can understand? He threw away the notebook in his hand, turned his head to look at Indigo, and said nothing. It wasn't until he saw that Indigo was breaking out in cold sweat that he smiled and said, "Dr. Indigo, can I ask you a question?" Indigo looked at Sorata warily, shuddering at his sudden smile. "My lord, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, I will know everything. Have you ever experimented with humans? Advertisement?" Sorata suddenly changed his face, and pressed on Indigo with great momentum. Sensing the sudden aura rising from Sorata, Indigo sat down on the ground in a panic. He trembled, and then thought that Sorata was still waiting for his answer, so he looked up at Sorata and shouted loudly. "No, my lord, no, I have never used humans in experiments." Red light flashed in Sorata's eyes and stared at Indigo for a while, then withdrew his gaze and put away his aura. He could sense from Indigo's emotions that he shouldn't have lied, and he didn't see any human beings in this laboratory. In addition, this guy is not really a villain, just a doctor. Sorata formally invited him. "Dr. Indigo, as the captain of the Freedom Adventure Group, I formally extend an invitation to you to come to my ship as a ship's doctor." Indigo breathed a sigh of relief when Sorata withdrew his momentum. He felt that if he didn't satisfy Sorata with his answer just now, this guy would really kill him. Unexpectedly, he suddenly heard a voice that surprised him even more. He looked up at Sorata and stared at his serious eyes, stunned. Are you serious?" He couldn't believe that he could still be the ship's doctor on the opposite ship. Even if the opponent is just a pirate who just went out to sea, but the opposite is the pirate who just killed the Golden Lion. Such a pirate invites him on board and makes him feel like a dream. Sorata stared at Indigo, smiling. "I just want a doctor on board. Do you want to come, Dr. Indigo?" Now Indigo reacted, and he quickly nodded in agreement with Sorata's invitation. Regardless of the fact that he and Golden Lion have been together for decades, they actually have no feelings for each other, nor can it be said that there is any betrayal. After all, the Golden Lion is dead, so he has to find a place, doesn't he? If you don't promise this guy, let alone whether he will let you go, even Marine will not let you go. Oh, by the way, Dr. Indigo, since you have boarded my ship, you will never be able to study these things again. Sorata helped Indigo up, and said to him seriously, from now on, you can only study healing and medicine for various diseases. Can it be done? Yes, my lord. Indigo hasn't adapted yet, so he hurriedly called Kaido. Call the captain. Yes, captain. Chapter 49 The Ant and the Rabbit. Do you really want to burn them all? The door of the laboratory? A chemical magic bomb appeared in Indigo's hand, and he looked at the laboratory rather reluctantly. Of course, why don't you stay here for the world government? Sorata stood by with folded arms, a sneer on his face. Still, you want to continue studying these things? No, captain, don't blame me. Indigo quickly waved his hands and defended loudly. I'm just a little bit reluctant. After all, I have been studying IQ for almost 20 years. It's a pity to have so many notes. Hurry up, I still have to go to the treasure house to have a look. When Marine comes later, I can leave, but you may not. Thinking of Marine, Indigo hastily threw the magic bullet in his hand into the laboratory. He didn't want to be caught by Marine and put an impel down. Even though he didn't offer a reward, Marine still managed to catch it. Who told him he was the ship's doctor on board the Golden Lion? This is registered with the world government. As soon as the magic bullet was shot into the laboratory, it exploded instantly when it hit the culture tube, and the flames generated by the explosion quickly spread throughout the laboratory. Looking at the fire in front of him, Indigo's eyes flashed a trace of reluctance, but looking at Sorata walking outside, he quickly put away this trace of reluctance, and his eyes were full of hope for the future. It should be fun to follow such a captain, after all, this guy is still so young. Rumble. Looking at the heavy iron gate in front of him, Sorata showed a look of expectation. With the thickness of this iron door, there must be a lot of good things inside. But when he opened the door and saw the inside clearly, he couldn't help being dumbfounded. I saw that Bao Curry was full of weapons. There are swords, guns, and cannons, but there is no gold, silver and jewelry, and even berry is pitiful. Sorata turned her neck stiffly and looked at Indigo beside her with a gloomy look on her face. Indigo, you've been making this stuff for nearly 20 years? Indigo didn't see Sorata's gloomy face, he smiled smugly. Calcal. Yes, we are planning to destroy the world, of course we must stockpile enough weapons. What about gold and silver jewelry? It's all changed to weapons. Where's berry? Sorata's tone became more and more serious. Of course it's a weapon. I said Captain, berry is useless. Is it because the weapon is not good, or? Indigo stopped talking suddenly, he had already seen Sorata's gloomy face. He gave a dry laugh cautiously. Kale. Haha. What's the matter, Captain? Isn't it bad to have so many weapons? Okay, of course. Advertisement. Sorata looked at the treasure house full of weapons and the piles of shells inside, wanting to cry without tears. What a fart, okay. With so many weapons, one army can be equipped to fight a super battle. However, such a thing is of no use to him. He likes gold and silver jewelry, likes berry, and doesn't like these cold iron bumps. He suddenly thought of something, his eyes lit up, he turned his head and stared at Indigo expectantly and asked. By the way, Indigo, you have been wandering around the world for the past 20 years, you should have found a lot of devil fruit. Indigo thought for a moment, he was a little afraid to speak, for fear of irritating Sorata. He now knows what Sorata wants, but what Sorata wants has been replaced with weapons. But when looking at Sorata's increasingly dangerous eyes, he had to bite the bullet and speak carefully. Sorata interrupted him roughly. Don't hesitate, speak up. Indigo was shaken by Sorata's yelling, and said aggrievedly, Captain, don't yell so loudly, I just say no. I found a few devil fruits, but I sold them all and went to buy weapons. Is it sold? Sorata felt bad all over. Is there something wrong with the old guy's head, Golden Lion? How good it is to keep it for your subordinates to eat. Kang curry, these iron bumps are used for wool. But, hearing that there was a turning point, Sorata's eyes lit up, and she asked quickly, but what? But there are 2 useless zone devil fruit left. He was relieved to hear there were 2 more. It's fine if there's more, he thought this trip was going to be wasted. It is said that the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. At first, he thought that there would be a lot of gold and silver jewels, berry, and devil fruit. After all, the old guy wants to destroy the world, how could he have no money? Who knew that the old guy actually bought such a weapon? So many weapons, if they were given to the Revolutionary Army, then the Revolutionary Army wouldn't take off completely. He stroked his chin and stared at the treasure house in a daze. Then he shook his head, it's impossible, even if it was given to the Revolutionary Army, they couldn't transport it away, because Marine will be here soon. It seems that they have to be destroyed, he can't leave it to the world government. Even if the other party does not lack this thing. Indigo carefully glanced at Sorata with his eyes, saw that Sorata's complexion improved obviously, and let out a sigh of relief. He is still very afraid of Sorata now, After all, he just joined and doesn't know what kind of character Sorata is. Sorata turned to look at Indigo and said angrily, since there are 2 left, why don't you take them out? Yes, yes. Indigo hurried into the treasury, dug out 2 pineapple-sized fruits from a pile of scrap metal behind the door, and walked out. For the Golden Lion, these 2 fruits were not as valuable as weapons, so they were just thrown in the corner of the treasure house. Advertisement. Looking at Indigo, the fruit turned out from the corner like a garbage dump. The corner of Sorata's mouth twitched. He wants to see what kind of trash fruit it is, which makes people so disgusted. After taking the fruit from Indigo, he turned it upside down, but he couldn't tell what kind of fruit these 2 were. He looked up at Indigo. Sensing Sorata's gaze, Indigo quickly explained, this black one is zone ant fruit. As for what shape it is, I don't know at all. From past experience, this is an ordinary zone fruit. Eating it can turn a person into an ant-man. Because the power added by the ant is too weak, it can't be sold, so it has been kept until now. Gone. Ant. Being looked down upon by others. This thing is very strong. With armor, it is also very strong. Sorata stared at the black ant fruit that looked like a large grape, and asked doubtfully, how could no one want it? Don't look at ants as if they are very strong among insects, but they are different in humans. This thing can also double its strength from the beginning. And, what? And this price is unaffordable for ordinary pirates. If it is too high, it can't be sold. It can't be given away for free. It was just thrown here casually in the end. That's right, for other fruits that can be increased several times or even dozens of times at every turn, this thing is rubbish. Sorata nodded, looking at the black fruit in her hand. Ants? He doesn't believe that ants are really so weak, probably because no one has really developed them. After all, ants are not a bottom-level species in the insect kingdom. What about this one? Sorata held up another white fruit and asked. This one is similar to the ant fruit. This one is a rabbit fruit, and the increase in physical strength is too low, so it can't be sold. Rabbit? Sorata stared at the white fruit, a hint of curiosity flashed in her eyes. What would it look like if it was eaten by a beautiful woman? He shook his head, hastily shaking off the horrible thought that suddenly popped up in his head. He doesn't want to have bunny ears and a bunny girl. In addition to being cute, rabbits only have good jumping ability on their hind legs. This thing is not like ants. He can still think of ants, which can develop invincible power in the later stage through training. And there might be other surprises, but for rabbits, he really couldn't think of any training method. It seems that rabbits can go berserk. He suddenly remembered that the rabbit still has red eyes, if there is a rampage. Sorata looks at the white rabbit fruit and her eyes light up. Then this thing is not a garbage fruit. But this thing also depends on luck. If it doesn't have berserk and other abilities, it is really a garbage fruit. Then he thought that a Wa or a Dao had eaten this thing, and he couldn't help shivering. The bunny girl is gone, but there is a fat bunny. Let's go. Marine should be here soon. He threw the fruit to Indigo and told him to find a box to put it in. After Indigo installed the 2 fruits, he swung his sword at the treasure house twice. With so many weapons and shells, it would be a wonder if they didn't blow up. Then he expanded the space domain, controlled a door panel, and left here with Indigo. Chapter 50. The first fight with Kizaru. East Blue. A group of giant fleets coming from naval headquarters are heading towards Puluoshu's island at a fast speed. When the bearded man left, he used the phone bug on the warship to contact naval headquarters. As soon as naval headquarters received the news, they immediately dispatched Admiral Kizaru's warship directly across the comm belt and headed for East Blue at the fastest speed. At this time, Garp is still in New World. Aokiji is not in the headquarters, and Akainu will stay in the headquarters to defend and wait for the call of the Holy Land Marijoy at any time. So only Kizaru from the science department is free to go to East Blue. And only his fleet can reach the East Blue the fastest. In addition to Admiral Kizaru's main battleship, this fleet also accompanied 1 vice admiral and 5 rear admirals. A total of 7 huge battleships lined up, facing the huge waves formed by the falling of the island, heading forward. At this time, they could already see the outlines of the 2 giant islands in front of them. As for the original Prush Island, it had completely disappeared into the sea now. The bow of the largest battleship. A tall and thin figure in a yellow and white striped suit, purple tie, dark green shirt, white leather shoes, and a marine justice coat, looking forward with his hands in his trouser pockets. This is the Marine's highest combat power, one of the Admiral of Headquarters, Paluzolino, with the Marine codename, Kizaru. Because he has short black hair with natural curly hair, a circle of stubble on his face, and brown sunglasses, and looks a little old, he is called the Old Man by the people in the science department. And we 2-dimensional people like to call him Yellow Pikachu, Seafood Admiral SpongeBob SquarePants. Because of his obscene words, it is also possible that he is the shining man who ate the obscene fruit. Kizaru watched the huge waves coming in front of him one after another, and said the mantra, "It's really scary." Next to Kizaru, a man wearing a tall hat, a long black beard on his chin, wearing an indigo suit and a marine justice cloak, looked at the island ahead. With a serious face, he said solemnly, "It seems that the battle is over." This person is the Marine Vice Admiral, Stallo Berry, who came this time, and he belongs to Naval Headquarters Borsalino Admiral. Yeah, and it should end with Golden Lion losing. Kizaru sighed slowly towards the front, its scary, silver-haired Sorata. What? At this moment, a shocking explosion erupted suddenly on the small island ahead. Berry stared at Kojima and said in surprise, "It's not over yet, these two guys are still fighting." Kizaru turned his head to Berry and the 5 rear admirals behind him and said, "I'll go over to have a look first, and you guys hurry over here." As he said that, golden light shone all over his body, and his whole body scattered into photons, shooting towards the small island in front of him. This guy is a Logia sparkling fruit user. Commonly known as the Flashman, he can turn any part of his body into light, possesses the speed of light, and can attack and move at the speed of light. It can use the speed of light to make a heavy blow, and the body can emit a strong flash, which can cause temporary blindness to the enemy. It can be said that in terms of the most handsome and strongest fruit in One Piece, this guy's fruit can be ranked in the top 5. The two Sorata who just flew out of the palace collided with Kizaru. Sorata stopped in the air, staring at the yellow figure condensed by photons on the roof in front of him, with a gloomy expression on his face. "I knew he would not eat. But there is no way, 2 days of fighting, except for the wine, not a drop of water, he is already starving." So after giving Treasure a couple of knives, he asked Indigo to take him to the kitchen for a quick meal. Unexpectedly, it was delayed for a few minutes, and he actually met the person he least wanted to meet in Marine. Even if Marine came from Garp, it happened to be this yellow monkey. Thinking of this, he turned his head and spit to the side. How unlucky. Advertisement, he really didn't want to fight this guy. He glanced at Indigo beside him. "I can't teleport with this guy, and I can't fly as fast as Kizaru. It seems that I can't fight, at least let Kizaru know that chasing him is useless." After he figured it out, he looked to the roof ahead, and looked at Kizaru, who looked at everyone with a sarcastic look. The corner of his mouth held back, imitating this guy's appearance, and shouting slowly. "It's scary, isn't this a Marine Admiral Yellow Pikachu?" "Oh, wrong, get used to it." Sorata waved her hands again and again, rearranging her expression. "Yo, isn't this Marine Admiral Kizaru? It's scary?" Kizaru watched Sorata's performance, feeling baffled, especially Pikachu. He felt as if he was being humiliated. "But there is no evidence. It's annoying." He shook his head and stared at Sorata, his eyes flashed red, but he didn't find the aura of other strong men. "It seems that Golden Lion is completely defeated. I just don't know if he died or escaped." A trace of seriousness flashed in his eyes, but it didn't show at all on his face, and he still had that carefree expression of wanting to be beaten. Staring at Sorata, Kizaru teased with his chin forward and pouted, "It's scary. Silver-haired Sorata, Golden Lion can defeat him, what a monster." Sorata retracted the domain and lowered the door panel. Looking up at Kizaru on the eaves, he teleported and appeared in front of Kizaru in an instant, and used his mantra. "Speed is weight. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light?" Covered with armament Hockey's right foot, he turned around and volleyed towards Kizaru's head, like kicking a football. Kizaru looked at Sorata, who suddenly appeared in front of him, his pupils shrank. "What? It's not the speed, he can definitely sense the speed." When he heard Sorata say what he often said, the obscene expression on Kizaru's face was almost unstoppable, and the corner of his mouth twitched. What's the matter with this guy, not only imitating his speech, but also imitating his moves? Looking at the kicking foot, he thought about it, and easily dodged it by turning his brain into elements. Then his whole body turned into elements, turning into photons, and instantly condensed a figure on top of Sorata, with golden light shining on his right foot, and he made a volleying motion. "So, have you tried flash kick?" As he said that, he kicked Sorata's head, who was still kicking. This guy is trying to fight fire with fire. His kick went straight through Sorata. I saw a beam of yellow laser light shooting through the roof, and then there was an explosion below. Looking again, where the kick hit Sorata, it was just an afterimage. And Sorata teleported on top of Kizaru again the moment Kizaru's foot came. The same movement, the same armament Hockey's foot, the same kick towards Kizaru's head. Of course, it's also like kicking the air, feel nothing. Kizaru dispersed into a photon figure, and condensed at a position less than 1 meter away from Sorata. He kept his lazy face away, looking at everyone with a teasing expression, and rarely showed a serious expression. If it's just about speed, he's definitely faster than Sorata. Advertisement, but this guy can move instantly, so it will be difficult. Sorata can't kick him, and he can't kick Sorata. Staring at Sorata, a trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes, and he said in a serious tone, "Silver-haired Sorata, it seems that everyone has underestimated you." He glanced at the knife on Sorata's waist, and then said, "Not only is he a great swordsman, but he also ate space-type devil fruit, which is really scary. He doesn't know what makes someone teleport, other than the devil fruit ability." Sorata didn't explain either, but just tore off the wine gourd at his waist, lifted it up and took a sip. Then he stared down at Kizaru, and said with a mocking smile, "If you Marines don't catch the remaining pirates on this island, what's the point of coming to fight me, a good citizen?" He looked at the huge monsters rushing towards here because he heard the explosion, pointed to the monsters and said, "You guys have to catch this thing, or it will be a disaster if you stay in East Blue." "What?" "Pirate, don't forget your identity. We Marine do things, and it's not up to you, a pirate, to point fingers." Kizaru stared at Sorata blankly. No need for Sorata to say, he knows the dangers of these beasts. The least harmful ones on this island are those pirates. Sorata shrugged, looked at Kizaru in disgust. "I said Uncle Pikachu, we just pretend we haven't met. Anyway, you can't do anything to me, can you?" He paused and then said, "Besides, your salary does not allow you to work hard with me." Kizaru nodded at the side, thinking, this guy is quite right, his salary really does not allow him to go to Sorata desperately. And his mission this time is indeed not to arrest Sorata. Then he kicked hard and kicked away a fierce beast that had just arrived here and wanted to sneak up on him. What the hell, he was almost taken into a ditch by this guy just now, he didn't become a marine for his salary. He stared up at Sorata, with a flash of anger in his eyes. You be asterisk 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 D. Don't call people casually. This old man is Kizaru. Kizaru, not some Pikachu. Uncle Pikachu. Sorata kicked a fierce beast away and said indifferently. Then he ignored Kizaru, teleported to Indigo, patted the guy on the shoulder, go. Oh well. Indigo recognized Kizaru the moment he saw him. As long as you pay attention to the pirates in the news, there should be no one who doesn't know the 3 admirals of Marine. These 3 guys are currently the strongest 3 that Marine advertises to the outside world. It is also the facade of Marine. He was quite worried about Sorata at the beginning, even though Sorata won the Golden Lion, he thought he could challenge Marine Admiral. He knows how weak the Golden Lion is now, but when Sorata teleported, he breathed a sigh of relief. No wonder he can beat Golden Lion, he can fly, he can teleport, and he should have other abilities. This captain seems to be on the right track, and Marine Admiral can evenly compete. Sorata looked up at Kizaru who was fighting the beast, and it was obvious that the guy was doing his job and fishing. He unfolded the space domain, controlled the door panel and flew into the sky. In fact, he and Kizaru reached a tacit understanding when the beast came. He can't do anything to Kizaru, and Kizaru can't do anything to him. In addition, Kizaru was not very determined to catch him, so he let him go. Kizaru on the ground kicked away a fierce beast, looked up at the door panels flying higher and higher in the sky, and couldn't help sighing. Marine and world government have another headache. But these are none of his business, he is just an old marine with a low salary. The guy was back to his usual demeanor. 1 beast per foot, 1 mouthful, kawaii, so scary.